Chapter 977. Fifth step spirit body was already the pinnacle of mortal bodies, and its life magnetic field was frightening. At the sixth step, not only would the spirit body be several times more powerful, it would also gain a special ability, damage absorption. Of course, it couldn't absorb all of the damage, but absorbing 20 to 30% was already astonishing. It should be known that a powerful 5-star king's protective Jin Yuan was already very powerful. Adding on the supreme grade battle armor, even if their defense wasn't impenetrable, it wasn't easily broken. At this moment, with the damage absorption special ability, its effect could be said to be earth-shattering. Although Yi Chen's orbital strike had directly penetrated the Golden Bell Phantom and protective Jin Yuan to attack Shu King's body, the sixth-step spirit body's defense was inconceivably powerful. Moreover, with a portion of the damage absorbed, it could only leave behind a faint bloody mark. Not even the skin was completely damaged. One could well imagine how freakish Shu King's defense was. What a good sixth-step spirit body. With a flicker, Yi Chen retreated dozens of li, maintaining a certain distance from Shu King. Now you should know where my confidence comes from, right? Shu King raised his head and coldly looked at Yi Chen. Yi Chen faintly nodded. Indeed, your strength and trump cards are both beyond my expectations. I didn't expect you to forcefully raise your spirit body to the sixth step. Under normal circumstances, apart from body refining kings, peak fifth step spirit body was pretty much the limit of life and death kings. If they wanted to continue, they would have to constantly consume heavenly treasures and use their medicinal power to refine their spirit body. Not to mention Shu King, even Yi Chen had to consume a lot of treasures to raise his spirit body to the fifth step, such as spirit energy crystal stones, dragon bloodgrass, dragon bone jade marrow, and sky fiend fire spirit fruit. Although there seemed to be a difference of 1 step between the fifth step and the sixth step, the difference in strength was several times, or even 10 times, and the consumption of treasures was much higher. It could be said that advancing from the fifth step to the sixth step was not as easy as advancing from the first step to the fifth step. However, thinking about it, it was understandable. Shu King was the sect master of the Void Sect, and the Void Sect was the #1 sect in the world. After countless years of accumulation, it was still acceptable for them to have so many resources. This time, Yi Chen is going to lose for sure. Shu King has a rank 6 spirit body, which makes him invincible. Unless it's a 6-star king, who can injure him? Even an ordinary 6-star king wouldn't be able to kill Shu King with a single strike. Shu King could easily use the space profound to escape. Look, I knew that Shu King wasn't simple. This Yi Chen was arrogant and conceited, and he finally suffered a setback. He thought that he was invincible, but now he has finally met the real invincible. Behind Shu King, everyone looked at Yi Chen with disdain and sneers. Behind Yi Chen is already very powerful. Apart from Shu King, who here can contend against him? Moreover, he has only entered life and death realm for less than a year. If he had more time, Shu King and 6-star kings would not be his opponent. Unfortunately, he doesn't have much time. Heaven is jealous of geniuses. Not necessarily. Look, Yi Chen's expression hasn't changed at all. Does he still have some trump card? Perhaps he does. Perhaps he is just naturally calm. At this moment, not only did Shu King's faction not believe that Yi Chen could win, even Yi Chen's faction didn't believe that Yi Chen could win. The only difference was that they had different standpoints. I believe in him, Xianhu said indifferently. Oh. Demon Flower Emperor looked at Xianhu. Xianhu seemed to be talking to herself. Perhaps you guys don't know much about him. I and Dragon King have been paying attention to him since a long time ago. He has been able to turn the tables in countless desperate situations. This is only one of them. His future path is still very long, and he won't fall now. Confidence in a person needed time to be maintained. If one knew the person well, then one would have complete faith in him. If one didn't know the person for long, then one's confidence would be greatly reduced. At present, apart from Xianhu, everyone else's confidence in Yi Chen was greatly reduced, to the point where it couldn't even be considered confidence. Since even you, Xianhu, believe in him, how can I, Demon Flower Emperor, not believe him? Letting out a breath, Demon Flower Emperor calmed down. Yi Chen, as my grandson's master, you can't die. Among the crowd, Spirit Pill King was also very worried. Hihi, Yi Chen, you forced my Blackwater Alliance to disband and occupied the Devouring Island. You didn't expect retribution to come, right? Once you lose, the others are nothing to worry about. At that time, I will attack your Yi family first. At the back of Shu King's camp, a figure stood there. It was the former Blackwater Alliance's Vice-Alliance Master, Yin Sky King. However, his face was filled with viciousness. Yi Chen, you have no way out now. Whether you are afraid of battle or not, the result will not change. After executing the undefeatable Void Battle technique, the Void Emperor's aura was like a monstrous tsunami, rippling out in waves. Coupled with that demonic godlike body of his, the pressure that the Void Emperor gave off right now was boundless. Yi Chen laughed. Shu King, I admit that your defense is very strong, but how can you defeat me? Your attack is much weaker than mine. Hearing Yi Chen's words, many people reacted. That's right, Shu King's defense was very strong, but no matter how strong it was only passive. Unless one's attack was stronger than Yi Chen's, there was no way to defeat Yi Chen. At this moment, Yi Chen's side was filled with confidence, while the expressions of Shu King's side were a bit ugly. Is that so? Shu King's expression didn't change. The undefeatable Void technique is a secret battle technique, and even my soul force has increased. If I use a soul attack against you, I wonder how much power you can use. Soul attack secret techniques could shake the opponent's soul and cause their strength to drop. This was what Yi Chen used to deal with Blackwater Ancestor and the yellow-robed old monster. Try it. Yi Chen's smile didn't diminish. As you wish. The undefeatable Void technique couldn't be maintained indefinitely. Shu King didn't want to waste time with Yi Chen like this. His figure flashed, and like a jumping arc of light, he pounced on Yi Chen from an unimaginable angle, spirit-extinguishing thread. Without a sound, countless invisible yellow silk threads shot out from between the surreal Emperor's eyebrows. These silk threads looked like the silk of a spider, but compared to it, the yellow silk threads were even more crystal clear. Moreover, they were so fast that they looked like phantoms as they drilled into Yi Chen's eyebrows one by one. Soul light. Between Yi Chen's eyebrows, the silver vertical eye opened. With a puff, a silver light beam shot out, like the scorching sun melting snow. A large number of yellow threads were eliminated, but there were too many of them. The silver light beam that Yi Chen shot out couldn't destroy them all at once, and could only sweep half a circle. The next moment, hundreds of yellow threads entered Yi Chen's forehead. Swoosh. In Yi Chen's mind, there was a rustling sound. This was the sound of the yellow threads invading his sea of soul. Destroy. Suppress. Something strange appeared in the sea of soul, causing the Destruction Sword Spirit and the Immortal Sword Spirit to tremble together. Although the soul was different from the will, the two had something in common. They could both affect the other. The Destruction Sword Spirit shot out a large amount of black sword intent, attacking the yellow threads, while the Immortal Sword Spirit released a halo of sword intent to protect the Sea of Soul. However, Shu King's soul attack was too powerful. Moreover, in terms of will, Yi Chen didn't have much of an advantage. The Destruction Sword Spirit was a 6th-step sword spirit. Compared to an ordinary 7th-step sword spirit, the Immortal Sword Spirit was only at the peak of the 5th step, which was equivalent to a peak 6th-step sword spirit. On the other hand, powerful titled monarchs like Shu King and Air Emperor had 7th-step wills, or even peak 7th-step wills. Therefore, Yi Chen's Destruction Sword intent could only eliminate a small portion of the yellow threads, and the Immortal Sword intent wouldn't last long. However, it was enough. Yi Chen himself also cultivated a soul defense secret art. After reaching the life and death realm, whether it was a soul attack secret art or a defensive secret art, they were both indispensable. Primordial Spirit Undying. In the depths of the Sea of Soul, a strand of light blossomed. At first, it was only a tiny speck, but in a thousandth of a blink, it expanded to millions and millions of times, illuminating the entire Sea of Soul. All the yellow threads immediately disintegrated upon contact with this inextinguishable light, failing to cause any damage. Primordial Spirit Undying, Primordial Spirit Lock was a set of soul secret arts, and Yuan Emperor wasn't the creator of this set. According to Yuan Emperor, this was a soul secret art created by an extremely powerful ancient emperor. It was called Primordial Spirit Secret Art, and he had obtained it by chance. Since then, he had never suffered a loss in a battle of the soul. Primordial Spirit Secret Arts were extremely difficult to cultivate. Although Yi Chen had only cultivated Primordial Spirit Undying to minor completion, it was already extremely useful. If Shu King thought that he could injure Yi Chen with a sharp increase in soul power, he was gravely mistaken. Shu King's brows creased. It wasn't that he didn't know that Yi Chen was a soul genius. However, in terms of soul power, Yi Chen was only comparable to him. It was impossible for Yi Chen to be much stronger. Now, he had used Void Invincible Battle Art, and his soul power had skyrocketed. Coupled with the extremely tyrannical spirit extinguishing threads, it still didn't have any effect. Shu King, you take my primordial spirit lock as well. Yi Chen groaned with a low voice as a mass of golden light shot out of his vertical eye. It was vaguely visible as a golden halo. The golden halo was extremely fast, disappearing into the surreal emperor's forehead within a second. Shu King's expression changed several times. Inside his Sea of Soul, a huge golden halo attempted to trap his Sea of Soul. Its edges were incomparably sharp, unceasingly slicing. Spirit extinguishing threads, pull it out for me. Shu King was already prepared. Countless yellow threads shot out, pulling the golden halo outwards. In a short while, the invisible golden halo was actually pulled out of Shu King's Sea of Soul. Everyone could only see this scene when they released their soul power. This is too thrilling. Someone couldn't help but say. Although soul attacks were silent and didn't have a grand scene, compared to a head-on battle, soul attacks were much more dangerous. If one wasn't careful, they could be seriously injured and their soul damaged. As expected, Yi Chen wasn't surprised by this result. Just like the primordial spirit undying, Yi Chen's primordial spirit lock was also at the minor completion realm. He didn't think of using the primordial spirit lock to injure Shu King's soul. He just wanted to test its power. There was a trade-off. Chapter 978. Shu King's expression became slightly gloomy. The soul-extinguishing thread was his most powerful soul attack, and he had never used it before. This was his trump card, and he wouldn't use it easily. His original goal was to injure Yi Chen's soul so that he wouldn't be able to push his battle power to the limit. However, he didn't expect that Yi Chen's soul also didn't have any weaknesses. If he wanted to attack, he could attack, and if he wanted to defend, he could defend. That golden halo-shaped soul attack was extremely mysterious. If it weren't for the fact that his opponent hadn't cultivated it to a certain level, it would be hard to say whether he could come out unscathed. Since the soul attack didn't work, Shu King made a prompt decision and brazenly attacked. Void Palm Print, Great Destruction Golden Burning Palm, Brilliant Light Fist, High Void Finger, Hand Seals, Palm Arts, Fist Arts, Finger Arts. Shu King's hands moved left and right, throwing out 4 killing moves in a row. He wanted to exhaust Yi Chen to death with his vigorous cultivation base. He could see that Yi Chen's cultivation base wasn't perfect, probably only 60 to 70%. His cultivation base was originally 2 times higher than Yi Chen's, but now it was 3 times higher. Boom 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 boom. Transparent hand seals, flaming palm shadows, glowing fists, and illusory finger energies all swept towards Yi Chen. Moreover, these 4 killing moves of Shu King all had their own specialties. Void Palm could restrict Yi Chen's speed, Great Destruction Golden Burning Palm had extreme destructive power, Brilliant Light Fist was as fast as light, and High Void Finger was illusory and illusory. Apart from Great Destruction Golden Burning Palm, each move had the effect of restraining speed or proficiency in Space Profound. Adding them together, even if Yi Chen's orbit step could appear and disappear like a ghost, he still wouldn't be able to dodge. Forcefully dodging would only give Shu King an opportunity. Separate. Facing these 4 killing moves, Yi Chen neither retreated nor gave way. He raised the Sky Scorpio sword with both hands and heavily slashed down. Then, in an instant, he slashed out the second and third slashes. There were a total of 3 strikes. The 3 dark green sword curtains separated everything in front of them. The transparent palm imprints, flaming palm shadows, glowing fists, and illusory finger forces were all torn apart by the violent sword curtains. Fight. Fight crazily. No matter who lives or dies, it won't affect me. However, it's most likely that Yi Chen will die. Shu Qing's cultivation and defense are both higher than his. If this continues, the result will be obvious. The Yin Heavenly King sneered as he watched the battle. This can't go on. Innate Demon Emperor frowned. Yi Chen's cultivation base was indeed not weak. He had cultivated for more than 1,000 years. However, he seemed to have encountered something and was left with only 60 to 70% of his Zhen Yuan. Originally, this 60 to 70% of his Zhen Yuan was enough, but that was under the condition that they didn't engage in a prolonged battle. Once they engaged in a prolonged battle, not to mention 60 to 70% of his cultivation base, even 10,000 years of cultivation base wouldn't be enough. Who knew how long the battle would last? In ancient times, it wasn't like there weren't cases of evenly matched titled monarchs fighting for 3 days and 3 nights. Although Shu Qing's offense wasn't as strong as Yi Chen's, his defense was stronger. Yi Chen couldn't do anything to him. In the long run, no matter how much Zhen Yuan Yi Chen had, it wouldn't last long. The Void Invincible battle art can last this long. In fact, what Shu Qing was planning, Yi Chen was also planning. He was waiting for Shu Qing's secret art to retreat and his battle prowess to decline. However, up until now, Shu Qing's aura didn't fluctuate at all. It seemed like he could still maintain this battle prowess for a long time, and his Zhen Yuan was almost depleted by 1/3. In the crowd, the Heavenly Void King thought, the reason why the Void Invincible battle art is called undefeatable is because it can be maintained for a long time. Furthermore, there are 3 supreme grade essence stones left behind by our Void Gate's previous sect master, and each of them can increase the duration of the Void Invincible battle art by a lot. The battle between the two was getting more and more intense, reaching a climax. Since this era, there had never been such an intense battle. Under normal circumstances, it would end in a very short time. Either one side would be killed, the other side would flee, or both sides would stop fighting. No one would fight for such a long time when they knew they couldn't do anything to the other. This was no longer an ordinary battle, but a battle of life and death. Shu Qing's long hair fluttered in the air as he threw out a palm. Behind his back, a white gold chi flow appeared. One end of the chi flow was connected to Shu Qing's spine, while the other end entered the void, as if it was absorbing something from the void. Yi Chen, my Void Invincible battle art will get stronger the more I fight. Let's see what you can use to fight me. Shu Qing's battle prowess had clearly increased by a level, gradually reaching the same level as Yi Chen's. The more you fight, the stronger you get. Yi Chen also noticed this. The Void Invincible battle art's name shouldn't have appeared out of nowhere. It must have something to do with the void. That white gold chi flow hadn't been there before, but now it suddenly appeared. It wasn't that simple. Clang. Sparks flew everywhere. Yi Chen borrowed this force and suddenly flew back, his blue clothes fluttering in the wind. Trump cards, I also have them. You can get stronger the more you fight, so can I, Kai. With a flicker of purple light, Yi Chen flung his palm, and the Sky Scorpio sword floated above his head, its tip pointing forward. Yi Chen also has a trump card. Many people were startled. Up until now, Shu Qing's trump cards were endless, but Yi Chen hadn't revealed much yet. Impossible. How could this Yi Chen still have trump cards? Yin Sky King was most afraid of hearing this. 72 swords, Earth Fiend sword art. Yi Chen's right hand formed a sword finger and suddenly pointed out. Kai 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 Kai. The Sky Scorpio sword trembled and suddenly turned into 72 sword phantoms. The sword phantoms were purple in color and rapidly arranged, ultimately forming a huge purple sword. This was not the end. As soon as the huge purple sword appeared, it immediately established a connection with the heaven and earth. In the void, the island on the ocean below faintly had a black chi flow rushing toward the huge purple sword. It's the Earth Yuan evil chi. A life and death king cultivating Earth Zhen Yuan was suddenly startled. The evil chi of the Earth origin was a kind of tyrannical energy that was hidden within the Earth origin. Normally, when he cultivated, he would try his best to refine the evil chi of the Earth origin to prevent it from corroding his body, causing his body to stiffen and go berserk. However, he was very clear that the evil chi of the Earth origin was an extremely powerful energy. If used properly, its lethality was extraordinary. Break for me. Shu King sensed the might of this sword. Without waiting for the huge purple sword's might to reach its limit, he struck out with a palm, the blazing palm shadow incomparably powerful. Go! Yi Chen's eyes shone brightly as his sword finger guided the huge purple sword dyed with black chi flow toward Shu King. Peng! A world-shaking explosion resounded as the huge purple sword sliced apart the flaming palm shadow like a hot knife through butter. Golden Bell undying. Shu King didn't expect this huge purple sword to be so powerful. He promptly put his palms together and used his strongest defensive profound martial skill, Golden Bell undying. Immediately, a golden bell shadow covered Shu King's body. With a dang sound, the vast sound wave spread out rapidly, creating a ripple in the heaven and earth. Some life and death kings felt their bodies tremble, then were blown away as if they were riding on clouds. Blood leaked out from the corner of their mouths. This sound wave was a kind of vibrating power, and protective Jin Yuan had almost no effect on it. Rumble. The bell wave spread far and wide, causing the ocean below to explode and countless islands to be destroyed. Although Shu King had the protection of the golden bell shadow, he was still blown away. Only after flying for 1,000 li did he gradually stabilize his body. What a powerful sword art! Everyone was stupefied. The defensive sword art in Yi Chen's hands is more than 10 times more powerful than the legends say. Among the life and death kings present, which one of them hadn't seen countless martial skills? They all had some understanding of the defensive sword art. However, the defensive sword art that had been popular in the ancient times was absolutely not this powerful in Yi Chen's hands. Even those geniuses who had brought the defensive sword art to greater heights were far inferior to Yi Chen. I somewhat understand what you're feeling now. Demon Flower Emperor looked at Xianhu and smiled. The more you understand him, the more astonished you will be. Xianhu also smiled. 64 swords could display the 8 trigrams extermination sword art, while 72 swords could display the Earthfiend sword art, which was several times more powerful. The further one cultivated the defensive sword art, the harder it would be to cultivate it. Correspondingly, the further one cultivated it, the more powerful it would be. After comprehending thousands of sword arts of the sword world, Yi Chen's defensive sword art had long since reached the realm of 72 swords. Although he hadn't practiced it in time and was a bit rusty, the first wave of attacks was already no small matter. Moreover, the Earthfiend sword art was a bit different from the 8 trigrams extermination sword art. The Earthfiend sword art could absorb the Earth Yuan Qi and strengthen itself. In theory, the more Earth Yuan Qi there was, the more powerful the Earthfiend sword art would be. Of course, this was a bit unrealistic. Not to mention the lack of time to absorb enough Earth Yuan Qi, Yi Chen wouldn't be able to control too much of it. However, with Yi Chen's soul power, he could control a lot of Earth Yuan Qi. It's useless. Yi Chen, your Earthfiend sword art can't even break my Golden Bell everlasting sword art. How can you hurt me? Shu King's demonic godlike body was still straight. The cracks on Golden Bell everlasting sword had also been repaired by him. Of course, although he said so, his chi and blood were boiling. This sword was too powerful. Golden Bell everlasting sword art couldn't counteract all the power, and a part of the power was still transmitted into his body. Let's start now. Yi Chen controlled the huge purple sword and continued to attack Shu King. Shu King roared and used Golden Bell everlasting sword to the limit. Defense was sometimes a kind of victory. He didn't believe that Yi Chen had endless Jin Yuan to consume. Without Jin Yuan, no matter how powerful the sword art was, it would be useless. Clang! The gigantic purple sword brushed past the Golden Bell shadow, leaving a thick sword mark on it. However, the gigantic purple sword did not continue to attack the illusory emperor. Instead, it fell down and disappeared into the void. No one knew where it went. What are you playing at? Why didn't you break the golden bell everlasting sword art? Spirit Dan King was puzzled. He didn't think that the huge purple sword could hurt Shu King. He clearly had the chance to break the golden bell shadow. Shu King stood in the golden bell shadow with a cold expression. He was on guard against Yi Chen's attack. Although he didn't think that Yi Chen could hurt him, he had to be on guard. Earth Essence Evil Chi, absorb. Shu Anho's eyes suddenly lit up. She seemed to have understood something. The huge purple sword didn't disappear for long, only 10 breaths of time. But everyone present felt like decades had passed. Yi Chen, don't waste your time. Shu King thought that Yi Chen was stalling for time, but he was patient. What's the rush? This is the real Earth Fiend sword art. As Yi Chen spoke, the huge purple sword appeared. No, it shouldn't be called a huge purple sword, but a huge black sword. Unknowingly, the purple sword had been dyed black. A terrifying evil chi filled the air, forcing ghosts and gods to retreat. There was even a faint black electric current flickering on the surface of the sword. Go! Yi Chen stood in the air and pointed at Shu King. Kai! The huge black sword was like a black ray of light, flashing and disappearing. Chapter 979. Danger. The moment the huge black sword appeared, the illusionary emperor immediately felt an indescribable sense of danger. This sense of danger caused his blood and chi to boil and his pupils to shrink. His subconscious told him that it was impossible for him to block this sword with his current golden bell inextinguishable body and his sixth spiritual body. The power of this sword was more than 2 times stronger than before. It was as if it had undergone a qualitative change. If he didn't have any new tricks up his sleeves, he would be heavily injured even if he didn't die under this sword. Without any hesitation, Shu King circulated his Jin Yuan to the limit. In the depths of his dantian, the dormant violent dragon tiger Yuan pellet suddenly revolved, and a frightening medicinal power was immediately stimulated, fusing with Shu King's Jin Yuan. Immediately, Shu King's Jin Yuan exploded. This kind of explosion was like igniting a barrel of gunpowder. With a loud bang, Shu King's aura blasted a huge hole in the space. Roar! The formidable power caused Shu King to roar. He could feel that the explosive power of his Jin Yuan had multiplied. Although it wasn't a multiplying of his overall strength, it was still frightening. Moreover, his Jin Yuan had suddenly increased by so much, and his 6th-step spirit body seemed to be filled with power. Before this, he hadn't felt the pressure brought by 2,000 years of cultivation base. It was like using an iron barrel to hold water. No matter how violent the water was, it couldn't break through the barrel. But now that the water had turned into gunpowder, it was different. Of course, a 6th-step spirit body was only a 6th-step spirit body after all. It was far from reaching its limit. Eyes scarlet red, Shu King punched toward the huge black sword that was as fast as a black ray. He used his fastest brilliant light fist instead of great destruction golden flame palm, because the huge black sword's speed was too fast. In almost an instant, the shining fist and the huge black sword collided. An extremely frightening collision sound erupted after a moment of silence. For a moment, everyone couldn't help but seal their ears. No one could describe how frightening this collision sound was, because they couldn't understand what kind of collision of energy could create such a loud sound. If they weren't life and death kings, the sound wave alone would have turned them into a bloody pulp. A life and death king felt a chill near his ear and couldn't help but touch it. Moving closer, he saw that his finger was dyed red. It was blood. He's ridiculously strong. Even the collision of stars can't compare to him. The power of the gigantic black sword was much stronger than what the illusionary emperor had imagined. Not only did the terrifying force not dissipate in the previous collision, it even spread through his fist like lightning. In an instant, the illusionary emperor's right arm exploded into a bloody mist. His internal organs were all shattered, causing his chi and blood to flow in the opposite direction. However, this was not the worst part. The worst part was that after the gigantic black sword turned his right arm into a bloody mist, it continued to attack him like a hot knife through butter. For the first time, Shu King was forced to use his space-profound movement skill. The space shook, and on the right side of the Void Emperor, there seemed to be an extra mirror. The Void Emperor's figure suddenly split into two, one inside the mirror, and one outside the mirror. They were connected, but they didn't seem to be in the same world. It was a very strange feeling, like a person looking into a mirror. Puff! The huge black sword pierced through Shu King's figure outside the mirror, and this Shu King's figure immediately exploded. However, no blood splashed out. The huge black sword had suddenly used too much force, and with a peerless sword aura, it shot backward. Not good. Behind them, there were about 3 life and death kings in the path of the huge black sword's attack. It should be known that even if the huge black sword's speed was extremely fast, the aftershock would still be no small matter. A deviation of several hundred meters could still heavily injure them. Therefore, the two in front frantically dodged, pulling the deviation to more than 1,000 meters. In such a short period of time, they could only do this much. As for the last person, he didn't even have the time to dodge, and seemed to be thinking about something. The two in front felt their breathing stagnate, and their chi and blood churned. Fortunately, they pulled away twice the distance, so they were fine. However, the last person didn't expect such a change, and his eyes opened wide. His identity was actually Yin Sky King. Yin Sky King felt extremely wronged. Yi Chen's Earth Fiend sword art made him somewhat unwilling. Therefore, he was somewhat distracted. He didn't expect that Shu King would use a mirror-like space profound movement skill, diverting the disaster to him. The huge black sword couldn't restrain itself, and directly flew toward him. The two in front were several hundred meters away from the huge black sword's attack path, and he was standing right in the middle of it. Moreover, he was distracted, so how could he dodge? I can't accept this. At this moment, Yin Sky King felt incomparably sullen. He would rather die fair and square at Yi Chen's hands, letting the latter know who he was and that he had sent people to kill him. It was still better than dying like this. This kind of death was completely collateral damage, without any value or meaning. Bang! The huge black sword's momentum was incomparably fast. It instantly pierced through Yin Sky King's body, and his pseudo-supreme grade battle armor was pierced through. Yin Sky King lowered his head to look at the bloody hole in his chest. He seemed to want to say something, but just as he opened his mouth a little, his body exploded, turning into a bloody mist. He, who hadn't reached blood rebirth, died cleanly. Mirror clone. As for killing Yin Sky King, Yi Chen didn't care at all. On the other hand, Shu King's mirror clone had opened his eyes. These titled monarchs proficient in space profound couldn't be underestimated. The space profound martial skills they had created were simply too varied. In comparison, Yi Chen felt that his space profound martial skills were much simpler. They were only used for attacking or moving, and didn't have any other types of space profound martial skills. Come back. With a wave of his hand, the huge black sword drew a black arc and returned to Yi Chen's body. As if it had used up most of its power, the huge black sword wasn't as black as before, and a purple color began to be exposed. This was a sign that the Earth Origin evil chi was about to be exhausted. The Earth Fiend sword art could absorb a large amount of Earth Origin evil chi and fuse it with one's body. After being strengthened by the sword art, its power would explosively increase. It wasn't as simple as just compressing it. Before, the huge purple sword had disappeared because Yi Chen had controlled it to dive into the seabed and absorb the Earth Origin evil chi. Although the void could also absorb Earth Origin evil chi, the amount was too little, and couldn't compare to the seabed or the earth. The power of the Earth Fiend sword art didn't disappoint Yi Chen. Even if Shu King had activated the violent Tiger Dragon Yuan Pill's medicinal power, he still couldn't block the attack of this sword art. In the end, he had to rely on space profound martial arts to get out of the situation, but this had also led to Yin Sky King's death. What level of power is this? The power of the huge black sword shocked and terrified everyone. With a 6th-tier spirit body, the invincible void battle technique, and the activation of the violent Tiger Dragon Yuan Pill's medicinal power, Shu King's battle power was already infinitely close to 6 stars. He was definitely an overlord among the 5-star overlords, the top kind. However, under Yi Chen's sword, he still couldn't withstand a single blow. Could it be that this sword already had the lethality of 6 stars and had broken through to another realm? Everyone guessed correctly. This sword did indeed have the lethality of 6 stars. Among the Imperial sword arts, the Earth Fiend sword art was a very unique sword art. In theory, its power could be increased infinitely as long as there was enough time. Therefore, even if Yi Chen's strength reached an extremely high level in the future, the Earth Fiend sword art would still be useful. If there was enough time, the power of the Earth Fiend sword art could even surpass the 9 Return to 1 sword art that could only be performed with 81 swords at the same time. Of course, that would require too much time. Moreover, the weakness of the Earth Fiend sword art wasn't small, and that was that it required the Earth Origin Evil Chi. Without the Earth Origin Evil Chi, the Earth Fiend sword art was only a few times more powerful than the 8 Trigrams Extermination sword art, and was comparable to Merciless Water and Fire. In short, the Earth Fiend sword art was a sword art that needed to accumulate power. Go down. Seeing the huge black sword in this state, Yi Chen knew that with the current Earth Fiend sword art, it wouldn't be able to pose a threat to Shu King. He moved his finger, and the huge black sword once again escaped into the void and disappeared. Yi Chen. How could Shu King give Yi Chen time to accumulate power? At this moment, not only did he execute the invincible void battle technique, the medicinal power of the violent Tiger Dragon Yuan pill was also activated, and his battle power increased by another level. Boom! Shu King, whose eyes were blazing with red light, charged towards Yi Chen and struck out a palm. Even without the Earth Fiend sword art, you can't do anything to me. The iron-blooded silver-blue sword was unsheathed, and Yi Chen slashed out. The jade-green sword screen was still as violent as before, as though it could split the heavens and earth apart. Rumble. The shockwave swept out in all directions. Shu King's body slightly swayed, but he didn't take a single step back. On the other hand, Yi Chen was blown away for the first time. However, apart from his blood and qi boiling and a trace of paleness on his face, he didn't seem to have suffered any injuries. In fact, if it weren't for the pseudo-extreme grade sword, the iron-blooded silver-blue sword, Shu King might not have been able to gain the upper hand. The violent Tiger Dragon Yuan pill had increased his power by a level. However, the Merciless Water and Fire was a peak profound sword art after all, and it wasn't something to be trifled with. Yi Chen was at a disadvantage because his sword was a level lower than the Sky Scorpio sword. Perhaps it was the undefeatable void battle art that made Shu King's battle intent surge, or the violent Tiger Dragon Yuan pill's powerful medicinal power that made him go berserk, but Shu King didn't stop attacking Yi Chen. The storm-like attacks caused the sun and moon to lose their luster, and the heaven and earth to flicker. The seawater below raised sky-reaching waves and flashed with lightning. Yi Chen kept retreating. The current Shu King was too powerful, and his battle power was way above his own. Not only was his Zhen Yuan flowing out like water, but his chest was also starting to feel suffocated. It was a sign that he was about to be injured. However, the smile on Yi Chen's face was getting brighter and brighter. I've accumulated enough. Ha! After being blown away hundreds of li again, Yi Chen roared and raised his sword finger. A huge black sword with a horrifying aura appeared, and a powerful sword aura spread out. Shu King still had his reason, and immediately pulled away. His figure started to drift, which was a sign that he was about to use a space profound movement art. You don't have the chance anymore. The silver vertical eye between Yi Chen's brows opened, and a silver light beam entered Shu King's soul sea. The soul light couldn't possibly hurt Shu King's soul, but it was enough to make him dizzy for a moment. After all, the Earth Fiend sword art was a high-grade sword art among the Imperial sword arts, and its speed was faster than any of Yi Chen's sword arts. It's time to end this battle. The silver light beam shot out after the black sword. The speed of the silver light beam was so fast that it arrived before the black sword. The black sword followed closely behind and fiercely bombarded the Void Emperor's chest. Before the silver light beam hit the Void Emperor's chest, a powerful sword power had already penetrated through the Void Emperor's back. It could be seen how powerful this sword attack was. Chapter 980. Boom. It was as if a black and gold sun had exploded. The intense sound wave was accompanied by a dazzling light. For a moment, everyone felt like they had lost their hearing and sight. There were no longer any shadows in the world. There was only a strong light and a crazy and brutal impact force everywhere. A peak-grade battle armor was, after all, a peak-grade battle armor. Under the bombardment of the Black Sword, Shu King's golden battle armor didn't shatter, it only dented a little. However, Shu King's body wasn't as tough as the peak-grade battle armor. Countless cracks appeared on his body before it exploded into thousands of pieces. Even if he had a 6th-rank spirit body, when facing an attack that was several times stronger than his body's limit, his body would shatter into pieces. Unless Shu King was a body-refining monarch, he wouldn't be able to block this attack with his terrifying strength and 6th-rank spirit body. Of course, it was inevitable that he would be injured. How could a 6-star attack be taken lightly? After throwing out this sword attack, the evil power of the Black Huge Sword had been completely used up, and it had turned into a huge purple sword. Bang! Inside the golden armor, the only piece of flesh started wriggling at an extremely fast speed. Within a blink of an eye, it had turned into the Surreal King. He raised his fist as fast as lightning, and punched away the purple huge sword that had lost its momentum. The illusionary emperor was an extremely powerful titled monarch. His immortal body had already reached the realm of rebirth from a single drop of blood. With the protection of the golden armor, he was able to leave a piece of flesh intact. That piece of flesh was the flesh on his abdomen, which contained his dantian. Therefore, even though the illusionary emperor's body had been destroyed, he still retained most of his cultivation and could still fight. Yi Chen, I'll remember this. The surreal emperor's voice was extremely cold. He took a deep look at Yi Chen before flashing his body, turning into a beam of light and disappearing into the surreal. Shu King had been defeated. After retrieving the purple sword, Yi Chen didn't chase. With Shu King's comprehension of space, there was no point in chasing. No matter what, he had won this battle. Victory! The Spirit Pill King let out a sigh of relief, which was then followed by ecstasy. Spirit Dan King was not the only one who was ecstatic. On Yi Chen's side, everyone smiled as if a heavy burden had been lifted off their shoulders. They were the weaker side, and could only fight for a short period of time. However, if the battle dragged on, someone would definitely die. As life and death kings, no one was willing to die at this moment. They still had a long road ahead of them, and dying would not be worth it. Let's go. After Shu King left, the Heaven Void King was the first to retreat, taking with him a few of the Void Gate's kings and some kings who were on good terms with the Void Gate. Why is he so strong? This is so annoying. Zhong Tianxiang Emperor was the second to retreat. He did not have the means to resist Yi Chen's Earth Fiend sword technique. In comparison, he was likely to be the first to die when facing Yi Chen's Earth Fiend sword technique. This had nothing to do with combat strength. Yang Qingxian, it seems like we can only fight next time. Air Emperor also cast a deep glance at Yi Chen. This genius of the past had finally matured. Apart from the elusive 6-star kings, he was an invincible existence. His every word and action could change the direction of Elysium. From now on, nobody would dare to go against him. Even if he was like Shu King, who had the ability to come and go as he pleased, he was not willing to fight to the end. Xianhu sighed with emotion. Perhaps next time, we will fight side by side. There were no eternal enemies. For the sake of Elysium, there would be a time when they would fight side by side. Let's hope so. Air Emperor's body rippled and disappeared. Damn it. Where will my old ancestor put his face? Black Dragon Old Ancestor left hatefully. He had made up his mind to never provoke Yi Chen again, treating him as if he did not exist. In the end, only Azure Cloud Sword Emperor was left among the heavyweights. Azure Cloud Sword Emperor, we are both swordsmen. I feel that we should aim our sharp swords at the real enemy. Don't you think so? Yi Chen smiled faintly. Fist is the hard truth. From now on, everything you say is the truth. Whether I refute it or not is meaningless. I hope you are right. Azure Cloud Sword Emperor also turned around and left without any hesitation. With the heavyweights gone, there was no reason for the remaining shrimp soldiers and crab generals to stay. They seemed to have the advantage in numbers, but without a powerful titled monarch, they had no chance of winning. Not only did they need soldiers, but they also needed powerful generals. Generals and soldiers were inseparable. In just a short while, the 200 people from before had all left. The tense atmosphere above the chaotic demonic ocean also disappeared as if it had never existed. Phew, it's over. Thank you, everyone. Letting out a breath of turbid air, Yi Chen turned around and cupped his fists at the crowd. Yi Chen, you are treating me like an outsider. In fact, we didn't do anything. You are the one who contributed the most. That's right. Without you, it would be useless for us to come. Ending this incomparable battle by himself. Even if he couldn't be compared to the ancients, at least in this era, he was already a legendary figure. All good things must come to an end. The calamity of the alien races was imminent and everyone had their own things to do. It was impossible for them to chat here. After the 100 people got to know each other, they left. In the end, only Yi Chen, Xianhu, Demon Flower Emperor, Innate Demon Monarch, and Spiritual Dan King were left. I suspect that this war is a trap. Demon Flower Emperor suddenly said. Xianhu nodded. The human demon village is the secret of your race. Only the clan leaders know about it. The possibility of outsiders knowing about it is very low. Maybe, the demons have already infiltrated the kings of Elysium. They want to use this opportunity to know the location of the human demon village. They want to unseal the human demon village and let the demon ancestral tree return to the human world. Unfortunately, I can't stop them from seeing the human demon village. Demon Flower Emperor sighed. The human demon village was just an excuse. However, Demon Flower Emperor also knew that if she didn't summon the human demon village, the war wouldn't end so easily. Even if Yi Chen came, it wouldn't be possible. After all, before this, no one knew that the demon ancestral tree was sealed in the human demon village. They thought it was the hiding place of the demons. Even I don't know about the human demon village. It's very secretive. Innate Demon Emperor also nodded. Yi Chen said, the last seal of the human demon village was placed by Senior Yuan Emperor. Coincidentally, I have a clone of Senior Yuan Emperor here. If someone touches the human demon village, Senior Yuan Emperor will sense it. At that time, I will go and stop him. At least, he won't have the chance to unseal it. What? You have a clone of Senior Yuan Emperor here? The four were shocked. Worthy of being the last true monarch. Even after dying for so many years, he still has such a powerful trump card. This way, I have some hope for the foreign race's calamity. If Senior Yuan Emperor has a trump card, maybe the other monarchs also have a trump card. They won't want Elysium to be enslaved by the foreign races. The monarchs mentioned by Spirit Dan King were peerless characters that could leave their marks on the Emperor Scar Steely, not the monarchs of this era. Placing our hopes on others is not something we should do. Before that, we have to increase our cultivation. In terms of strength, the foreign race's calamity might not be as strong as the ancient times. But don't forget, the current Elysium is in a weakened state. Not to mention 7-star battle prowess, even 6-star battle prowess is scarce, and all of them are missing. Xianhu reminded. What Xianhu said is right. It is better to rely on ourselves than others. Unless those monarchs come back to life, they won't be able to play a leading role. How could Innate Demon Emperor not understand this logic? Hee. Spirit Dan King smiled and said, my strength is too weak, so I won't be of much use. However, my alchemy skills should be able to help you a lot. In this Pill King convention, I've purchased a lot of heavenly materials and earthly treasures. I'm sure I'll be able to refine some useful pills. Spirit Dan King's value did not lie in his battle prowess, but in his alchemy skills. He could even refine one of the 10 great ancient miraculous pellets, the violent tiger dragon Yuan pellet. This kind of achievement was even stronger than 10 ordinary monarchs. Before leaving, Demon Flower Emperor said to Yi Chen, Qing Cheng has already entered life and death realm, but she can't come out yet. She is currently familiarizing herself with the abilities she inherited from the demon's bloodline. When she comes out, she'll give you a huge surprise. Murong has entered life and death realm? Yi Chen turned his head. Right. I didn't expect that the demons she inherited would be so powerful. to the point that her coming out of seclusion has been delayed again and again. But, don't worry, her current strength has already reached the level of a peak king. In my opinion, her aptitude is even stronger than the majority of demons. She's almost at the level of high-grade demons. Demons were a race with a strict hierarchy. Different from Elysium, demons not only spoke with strength, but also with the nobility of their bloodline. Yi Chen knew a little about this. Alright, many thanks to Senior Demon Flower Emperor for teaching Murong with all your heart. With Murong entering life and death realm, Yi Chen heaved a sigh of relief. In the great calamity of the outsiders, without the strength of a life and death king, it would be hard for one to protect oneself. Everyone left. The chaos demonic sea was empty, and the sea breeze blew gently. I didn't expect the human demon village to be hidden in the depths of the void. It can only be summoned with a special seal. Unfortunately, this is only for the people of Elysium. We demons have an innate affinity with the demon ancestral tree. As long as we spend some time, we can easily find the human demon village. In the center of the enormous palace was a several dozen meters long table. Blood-red phantoms were sitting beside the table. The one sitting at the head of the table spoke. The other red phantoms said, although we know the exact location of the human demon village, that Yi Chen is an obstacle that we can't ignore. His growth is too fast. Therefore, we have to speed up the process of unsealing lords. Before he becomes even stronger, we have to start a war and sweep through the whole of Elysium. I heard that Lord Tianxia of Evil Spirit Race has successfully escaped. Perhaps we can contact him. Chapter 981. Before returning to the Yi family, Yi Chen paid a visit to the South Shallow Sea Alliance. Ever since the yellow-robed old monster was killed by him, the leader of the alliance was none other than the leader of the water ape race, Sun Tai. Sun Tai was, after all, a new demonic beast king, barely a mid-step king. Before Sun Xiaojin matured, the water ape race did not have the power to suppress the other forces of the alliance. If not for Yi Chen, Sun Tai would still be locked up in a secret prison. This time, Yi Chen planned to see if there were any bad signs. Regarding Sun Tai becoming the leader, it was impossible for the other deputy leaders to not have any thoughts about it. Perhaps Yi Chen had underestimated his power. The South Shallow Sea Alliance was in good order, and there were no problems. The other forces did not show any sign of disobeying Sun Tai, either. Instead, they were doing their best, just like before. The alliance is fine. Although a few deputy leaders are not convinced by me, they know their limits and do not dare to act recklessly. On the other hand, the Black Evil Island and the demonic god cult are a bit unstable. Recently, they even robbed a lot of our resources. Sun Tai told Yi Chen about the recent events. No worries, I will make them behave. As soon as Yi Chen finished, he disappeared into the surreal space. The demonic god cult was a tyrant of the South Deep Sea. Its power was just below the chaotic demon ocean, on par with the Black Evil Island. In the sky, Yi Chen's figure appeared. Without any nonsense, Yi Chen directly performed his Earth Fiend sword art. The huge purple sword dived into the seabed, and when it came back up, it turned completely black. A horrifying evil chi spread out, and its sword aura soared into the sky. Earth Demonic Emperor, it seems like last time was not enough to scare you. As he spoke, Yi Chen pointed out his sword finger, and the huge black sword attacked toward the island of the demonic god cult. Crack. The demonic god cult was protected by layers of formations, but under the huge black sword, it was like tofu, easily pierced through. The huge island was cut in half, and the seawater surged. Next, the Earth Fiend Island also faced Yi Chen's attack. Many experts on the island were frightened, and no one dared to come out. In a palace at the bottom of the sea, 3 figures stood there. This Yi Chen is so arrogant. The one who spoke was the Earth Demon Sovereign. However, at this moment, the Earth Demon Sovereign's body was emitting a thick evil aura and his face was filled with malice. Let him be happy for a while longer. When our army sweeps through the whole of Elysium, he won't even have time to cry. The Black Evil Emperor was also full of evil energy. Don't underestimate him. In terms of growth rate, this person is the first I've seen in my life. He might become a huge obstacle for us in the future. The golden turtle great ancestor, who had to conceal his evil aura, said, "It's a pity that we haven't familiarized ourselves with this body. Otherwise, with our strength, the three of us would be enough to kill him. There's no rush. With Lord Tianxia around, we will definitely obtain the final victory in this battle. At that time, our evil spirit race will be able to get at least 30% of Elysium. How many resources will that be?" After spending a week's time, Yi Chen finally completely restored his true essence. "It's time to head to the King Conferment Hall to accept my title." The time limit for the King Conferment Hall to accept his title was 1 year. If he didn't go within a year, the King Conferment Hall's Hall Spirit would directly teleport him over. Now, 1 year was almost up. The Tianwu region's King Conferment Mountain was a huge mountain that was tens of thousands of feet tall. The peak of the huge mountain was flat as if it had been carved by a knife, and an ancient and majestic square hall sat on it. Buzz! The space rippled slightly, and Yi Chen arrived at the square of the King Conferment Hall. He raised his head and saw a plaque on the door of the hall. There were 3 ancient words written on the plaque, King Conferment Hall. These 3 words were not only written with great force, but they also contained a boundless aura. Even if it was Yi Chen, he would be greatly inferior when facing these 3 words. It was as if he wasn't facing 3 words, but a mountain that could never be climbed, a vast and boundless starry sky. What a powerful will. Yi Chen didn't know who wrote these 3 words, but he was sure that the person who wrote these 3 words had also infused his own will into them. Anyone who came to the King Conferment Hall would feel reverence in their heart, not daring to show the slightest bit of disrespect. As if sensing Yi Chen's arrival, the door of the King Conferment Hall automatically opened, and the lights inside lit up one after another. Letting out a breath, Yi Chen walked in. Creak. The door of the King Conferment Hall closed. Is that the King Conferment pillar? Yi Chen didn't care about the door closing behind him. His gaze fell on a bronze pillar at the center of the hall. On it, there were many titles, from top to bottom, densely packed and innumerable. And the first title was not Ancient Emperor. Ancient Emperor was the first titled monarch, but not the first life and death king. "I've been waiting for a long time. Finally, one is here." A tender voice suddenly rang out. "Who?" Yi Chen had no idea where the voice came from. "Hee, I'm here." At the top of the King Conferment pillar, a petite figure jumped down. On a closer look, it was just a child, about 10 years old. He had red lips, white teeth, and big eyes. "You're the palace spirit?" Yi Chen probed. Indeed. The palace spirit had a proud look. "I'm Yi Chen, and I'm here to be conferred a king." Yi Chen found it a bit funny. This palace spirit actually had the appearance of a child. He didn't believe that it was natural. "Of course I know." The palace spirit sized up Yi Chen and nodded with maturity. "Your aura is very powerful." "Very good. Let me ask you, do you want to be conferred a king casually, or do you want to compete for the Sword King title? I think you have the qualifications to compete for it, although it won't be easy, and the chances of failure are very high." "With my current strength, I have a high chance of failure?" Yi Chen asked. His combat strength was already the limit of a 5-star overlord. If he had time to accumulate his strength, he could even burst out the combat strength of a 6-star overlord. The palace spirit rolled its eyes. "You think that you can compete for the title of Sword King just because you are strong? Stop dreaming. Competing for the title of Sword King doesn't depend on your combat strength, but your understanding of Sword Dao. At that time, you will realize that you can't even release your killing move, because you won't have time to accumulate your killing move. You can only use ordinary moves to fight, and you won't be able to release your soul power either. A person's life is very long. At the beginning, some people have great opportunities, while others have shallow opportunities. At this time, although those with great opportunities are stronger, it doesn't mean that those with shallow opportunities are weaker than them. Let me show you some scenes first, and you will know how strong the Sword King's achievements are." The temple spirit waved its hand and a screen of light appeared in front of the conferred king pillar. On the screen of light, there were 2 people, both very young. One had an ordinary appearance and a calm expression, while the other had an incomparably sharp aura. Each of them held an iron sword in their hands. Very strong. At first glance, Yi Chen knew that these two people were very strong. But for some unknown reason, his gaze was fixed on the ordinary-looking young man. This person's aura wasn't obvious, but he didn't give people a feeling of mediocrity. He was like a peerless treasure sword, hidden in its scabbard, without a trace of sword chi leaking out. As for the young man with soaring aura, his entire body gave off a feeling of sharpness that could cut through one's skin. He was like the incarnation of a sword. His aura was a sword, his hair was a sword, his gaze was a sword, and his fluttering clothes were a sword. Everything that was related to him was a sword. If someone said that he was weak, Yi Chen would be the first to not believe it. Both of them are very strong. That ordinary-looking one should be an ancient sword king. I wonder who the young man with soaring aura is. Yi Chen thought. On the light screen, both sides clashed. The first to attack was the young man with soaring aura. He waved his iron sword, and with a flash of his body, he slashed down. This sword was incomparably decisive, as if it could cut through anything. Moreover, Yi Chen discovered that his movements were too fast, as if it was in a flash. Could this be related to what the palace spirit said? You don't even have time to release your killing move? Ding, dang, dang. The next scene caused Yi Chen's eyes to narrow. 3 swords, just 3 swords, and the young man with soaring aura was defeated. His entire body was cut in half. The ordinary-looking young man didn't attack, but once he did, his opponent's aura was completely taken away by him. The last sword was incomparably stunning. When the sword was unleashed, the world lost its color. An ordinary sword move actually had such a stunning feeling. How is it? The palace spirit asked with a smile. Who is the Sword King's opponent? Yi Chen asked. The hall spirit replied, he's also a very famous swordsman called the Heavenly Sword King. Due to the rules, I can't show you the most powerful image. However, the Heavenly Sword King is considered to be in the top 20 among the swordsmen since ancient times. However, in the hands of the Sword King, he couldn't even block 3 sword strikes. If you don't have the confidence, don't challenge him. Without confidence, you will definitely lose. This is for sure. The palace spirit yawned. It doesn't matter whether I have the confidence or not. What's important is that I don't think I will lose. Yi Chen's eyes burst with the long-lost fighting spirit. To be able to fight with the strongest and most amazing swordsman since ancient times was a rare opportunity. It might only happen once. Interesting. Then, I will send you to fight with him. The palace spirit stretched its palm towards Yi Chen, and then it grabbed a human-shaped light shadow, sending it into the suspended light screen. The world was spinning. Yi Chen didn't expect the palace spirit to be so powerful. It helped him condense a consciousness and sent him to an unknown place. He simply couldn't fight back at all. This was a bamboo forest. When the wind blew, the bamboo leaves rustled. When his feet landed on the ground, Yi Chen's heart calmed down. On the opposite side, a figure walked over slowly. Although his appearance couldn't be seen clearly, from his calm aura, he was naturally the ancient Sword King, the strongest swordsman that every swordsman wanted to defeat. In the king's bestowal palace, the yawning palace spirit's expression turned serious. To be honest, Yi Chen was one of the top swordsmen he had seen. Among all the swordsmen since ancient times, he could be ranked in the top 3. Otherwise, he wouldn't talk so much nonsense with Yi Chen and even let him watch the battle between Heaven's Sword King and the Ancient Sword King. An ordinary swordsman wasn't qualified to enjoy such treatment. Yi Chen, regardless of whether you win or lose, this battle will be passed down to the future generations. The temple spirit picked up a fruit and took a bite, muttering unclearly. Chapter 982. In the bamboo forest, the Sword King slowly walked over with a calm expression. When they were about 30 steps apart, the Sword King stopped and stared at Yi Chen with clear eyes, not saying a word. Yi Chen also didn't speak. At this moment, the Sword King was the Sword King, but not the Sword King at the same time. The Sword King should be a clone of the palace spirit. It didn't have any thoughts, only instincts. Puff, puff. Almost at the same time, 2 iron swords fell from the sky, stabbing at the feet of Yi Chen and the Sword King respectively. The swords sank half a foot into the ground, their hilts still trembling. Yi Chen, if you can defeat the Sword King, I don't mind telling you the true cultivation method of life and death realm. If not, I'll have to wait until you're even stronger before teaching it to you. The palace spirit sat on a stone chair, swinging its legs. The Sword King and Yi Chen both pulled out their iron swords and calmly looked at each other. Neither made the first move, as if they were observing each other and waiting for the right moment. Huff! At this moment, a gust of wind blew past, rolling up countless bamboo leaves on the ground like flying swords. Hum! Hum! With a sword hum, the two charged at each other like lightning, swinging their iron swords. So fast. Yi Chen felt that his movement speed was twice as fast as usual, and his sword swinging speed was also twice as fast. The difference between the two was almost 3 times. No wonder the palace spirit said that he wouldn't even have the time to prepare a killing move. If he was even a little bit slower, he would be killed without any leeway. Yi Chen's powerful soul power played a crucial role at this moment, allowing him to adapt to such speed in a short time. Otherwise, even if he didn't die, he would be at a disadvantage. What baffled him was that the Sword King didn't seem to be able to adapt to such speed at first, but he soon adjusted as well. Seems like this is the palace spirit's doing. Yi Chen thought inwardly. Clang! The iron swords collided with each other, and sparks flew everywhere like a fairy scattering flowers. Some of the bamboo leaves that came into contact with the sparks were immediately set ablaze, like burning moths circling in the air. Borrowing the powerful recoil, Yi Chen flew back, his blue robes fluttering in the wind. The next moment, he landed on the ground and rushed forward with an even faster speed, stabbing out with his iron sword. Sword King's reaction was not any slower than Yi Chen's. His figure slightly swayed, dodging Yi Chen's lightning-fast sword strike. His iron sword slashed diagonally at Yi Chen's face. Rip! A strand of black hair was cut off. At this critical moment, Yi Chen tilted his head to the Sword King's face. Without protective Jin Yuan and soul power cannot be released. This kind of battle is just like fighting in the sword world. However, compared to the sword world, this place is much faster and more dangerous. Otherwise, he might not have been able to battle against the Sword King. Since ancient times, it was not without reason that the Sword King was able to occupy the position of the strongest sword artist. If he were not ridiculously powerful, he would have long been pulled down from the peak by the later generations. However, it's still not enough. If I want to defeat the Sword King, my current foundation is far from enough. Ding ding dang dang. In the blink of an eye, the two of them swung their swords continuously, exchanging hundreds of blows. Yi Chen could feel that he was gradually falling into a disadvantageous position. Every move of the Sword King was flawless. This was the realm of having no sword in the hand, but having a sword in the heart. However, it seemed that his opponent was a level higher than him, and was already close to the peak of this realm. The realm of having no sword in hand and sword in heart is truly a sight to behold. Even the Heavenly Sword King hasn't reached this realm. It would be strange if he could withstand 3 sword strikes. The temple spirit was not surprised by this result. However, reaching life and death realm within a year is not easy. Adding the Sword King and Yi Chen, there are only 4 of them, all things as swords. Borrowing the momentum to retreat, Yi Chen suddenly formed a sword with his left hand and pointed at the approaching Sword King. Kai 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 kai. In the air, the spinning bamboo leaves were like flying swords as they shot out. Neither of them had protective Jin Yuan, so the lethality of the bamboo leaves could not be underestimated. If they were hit, a flaw would appear. All things as swords. However, Yi Chen's plan was shattered. The Sword King could also use all things as swords. In this place, one couldn't release soul power. Therefore, it was impossible to use soul power to move the bamboo leaves. Yi Chen relied on his powerful sword intent to move the bamboo leaves. Apart from this, these flying sword-like bamboo leaves also contained his comprehension of sword Dao. Even if an ordinary sword artist could use their sword intent to move the bamboo leaves as swords, their lethality would be limited. This was because the bamboo leaves were too fragile and couldn't withstand the infusion of sword intent. Only those with high attainments in sword Dao could truly use all things as swords. This was something that Yi Chen had comprehended after comprehending the essence of several thousand sword arts of the sword world. Bamboo leaves exploded one after another. Yi Chen's bamboo leaves were indestructible and contained the destruction sword intent. On the other hand, the Sword King's bamboo leaves were indestructible and contained the immortal sword intent. As soon as the two collided, they were evenly matched. Neither could do anything to the other. Merciless water and fire have only allowed me to comprehend the essence of several thousand sword arts. However, I have yet to comprehend the essence of the later ones. I hope I can use this battle to improve. Yi Chen had only comprehended the sword arts below the 10th level of the sword world. There were even more profound sword arts above the 10th level. It was easy to comprehend one or two, but to comprehend all of them was not something that could be done in a short period of time. If he could do it, he would have already gained the upper hand. Not giving up on using all things as swords, Yi Chen continued to control more bamboo leaves to attack the Sword King. As for his real body, he was shuttling through the bamboo leaves to fight against the Sword King. He wanted to make the environment even worse and use it to break through. At this moment, his soul power, which was higher than the Sword King's, was the key to his victory. The trajectory of the bamboo leaves had almost become his instinct. He knew how to dodge and how to evade in advance. Not bad, you know how to use your advantage. The palace spirit nodded. An advantage was an advantage. If you didn't use your advantage, it wouldn't be called fair, it would be called idiocy. Everyone had an advantage. If you didn't use your advantage, it would be the same as giving others a chance. The Sword King was worthy of being the strongest sword artist since ancient times. Even in such a bad situation, he still had an unstoppable aura. When those bamboo leaves approached his body, they would be guided by his sword aura and attack back at Yi Chen. Only a small portion of the bamboo leaves could be of some use, but it made it much easier for the Sword King to dodge. The sound of metal swords clashing was endless. The two of them moved so fast that it was like a fast camera. It was impossible to tell who was who, only a flash of sword light could be seen. Puff! A wisp of blood blossomed. One of them was injured. Their figures crisscrossed, and Yi Chen opened a distance of dozens of meters. He looked down at his waist, where there was a thin sword mark. In the thousands of exchanges, Yi Chen hadn't been hit once. However, the Sword King's battle power had reached an unimaginable level. The last sword, which the Sword King didn't think would touch him, had touched him. If it wasn't for his fast reaction, he would have been cut in half at the waist and suffered a crushing defeat. This is the understanding of the sword Dao. Yi Chen thought back to that sword attack in his mind. That sword should still be in the no sword in the hand, sword in the heart, but since it could make him make a prediction mistake, it should have touched the next realm. As for what the next realm was, Yi Chen naturally knew. It's really dangerous. Unknowingly, Yi Chen's mental power had multiplied. Even he himself didn't notice it. The pressure brought by the Sword King had aroused his soul power bit by bit. In the past, although Yi Chen's soul power was 10 times that of ordinary life and death kings, it was only in terms of quantity. In terms of intensity, it didn't increase much. Intensity was more important than quantity. It meant that he could bring out the effects of his soul power to a higher degree, and comprehend things faster. A thought was too short, and Yi Chen didn't have much time to think before the Sword King's attack arrived. Puff! Puff! The injuries on Yi Chen's body grew more and more numerous. Blood dyed his clothes red, and he was in danger of being killed at any moment. However, every time, Yi Chen would always be able to avert the danger, displaying his superb willpower and unshakable confidence. The palace spirit was somewhat surprised. To be honest, he didn't have much confidence in Yi Chen. He was well aware of the Sword King's strength. This was a person favored by fate, but also abandoned by fate. The fact that Yi Chen could persist until now already made him very satisfied. As far as he was concerned, Yi Chen would be defeated within this period of time. However, he keenly noticed that the wounds on Yi Chen's body were becoming smaller and smaller. Some were merely grazed by the sword qi, not even touching the skin. What did this mean? It meant that Yi Chen was progressing through battle. It wasn't strange to improve in battle, but it depended on who the opponent was. To be able to improve under the Sword King's sharp attacks wasn't something an ordinary person could do. Furthermore, he had increased the speed of the two of them. An ordinary person wouldn't even have time to react, so how could they have the thought to make a breakthrough? Yi Chen's eyes grew brighter and brighter. The iron sword in the opponent's hand was no longer untraceable, but traceable. Moreover, he could barely dodge that incredible sword. The Sword King seemed to sense that Yi Chen had become stronger. His attacks became sharper and sharper, and the realm of his swordsmanship increased bit by bit until it reached a limit. Each sword became more unpredictable and couldn't be calculated with common sense. This was Yi Chen. If it was another swordsman, they wouldn't even be able to block a single sword. Kill. An emotionless roar resounded. The Sword King's essence, qi, and spirit erupted as he waved his sword at the peak. Under this sword, Yi Chen's soul seemed to be taken away. Whatever swordsmanship, whatever sword Dao, it was all extracted. Boom. A ball of lightning exploded in his mind, and Yi Chen suddenly felt enlightened. So this is the realm of no sword in the hand and no sword in the heart. Thank you. The iron sword in his hand casually waved, and the Sword King's head flew. At the same time, Yi Chen's left arm was also cut off. Although he had comprehended to a higher realm, it was still after the opponent waved his sword. Chapter 983. Powerful. As the palace spirit of conferred King Palace, it had seen all sorts of geniuses. Although Yi Chen was exceptionally talented, he might not be the first. However, the fact that he could improve in the battle against the Sword King showed that his talent was the most frightening. Nobody knew where his limits were. Even in a desperate situation, he could turn the tables. In other words, in terms of survivability, if Yi Chen said he was second, nobody would dare say they were first. At most, they would be on par with him. The palace spirit's big eyes brightened. No sword in hand, no sword in heart. After defeating the Sword King, Yi Chen's emotions surged, unable to calm down for a long time. Through the battle against the Sword King, he had comprehended the next realm of Sword Dao. No sword in hand, no sword in heart. Although he had only comprehended it and had not truly reached it, at least he had taken a step forward. It was no longer vague, invisible, and untouchable. No sword in hand meant that the sword arts had no flaws. No sword in heart meant that the heart also had no flaws. When the two were superimposed, it would be truly flawless. On the other hand, the opponent would be full of flaws. Even a Sword King who was close to this realm would have to bear a grudge under this flawless sword. Many thanks. Regardless of whether the Sword King was conscious or not, Yi Chen had to express his thanks. If not for the Sword King's last sword strike, he wouldn't have comprehended no sword in hand and no sword in heart so quickly. Come out. The palace spirit waved its hand, and a human silhouette flew out from the light screen, merging with Yi Chen's body. In the next moment, Yi Chen woke up. Congratulations. You're the first sword artist to truly defeat the Sword King. The palace spirit chuckled. Yi Chen opened his eyes. The ancients have already passed away. The one I defeated was merely another him, not the real one. Neither arrogant nor rash. No wonder you can have your current accomplishments. The palace spirit nodded in satisfaction. Do you want to know the true cultivation method of life and death realm? True cultivation method? Yi Chen revealed a puzzled expression, as well as a trace of palpitation. The palace spirit explained, don't you feel that the cultivation of life and death realm has many flaws? Why is it that there are early, mid, and late stages before life and death realm? As for cultivation base, it's not a realm at all. It's merely a matter of accumulation. As long as the gap isn't too big, it doesn't affect one's battle strength much. The greatest benefit of a high cultivation base is that one's battle strength can last. Moreover, after reaching life and death realm, of your Jin Yuan recovery speed is too slow. This is very abnormal. Your supreme grade spirit stones and treasures are mostly used to recover Jin Yuan, which is a waste. Then, What is the true cultivation method of life and death realm? Then of life and of, what is the true cultivation method of life and of? The temple spirit didn't answer directly. He took a bite of the fruit and said, "Your current star-level combat power is actually something I came up with when I was bored." What is your current combat power? His overall battle prowess should be that of a 5-star overlord. If he were to unleash his full power, he would be able to reach 6-star. The temple spirit's expression showed that it was as expected. There's a big difference, but it's not too ridiculous. Because I'm the one who made this, I have a set of the most standard identification methods. In my eyes, your overall combat power should be at the peak of 5 stars. If you go all out, you'll only be a 5-star overlord. You haven't reached 6 stars yet. Deviations. Yi Chen listened quietly. Before Dragon King challenged the path of death, he came to my place and asked me a few things. At that time, his battle power was mid 5-star, the most standard mid 5-star battle power. When he goes all out, he can even increase by 2 small levels, reaching the peak of 5 stars. According to your judgment, he is a high 5-star battle power, and when he goes all out, he is a 5-star overlord. The reason why there is a deviation is because everyone subconsciously judges the strength of others based on their own strength. Without a proper system, it's very normal for there to be a deviation. Moreover, this star battle power is something I made based on the situation in Elysium. Outside of Elysium, it has no use in judging. There are all kinds of races in the outside world. The star battle power judgment system works here, but it won't work on other races. Most importantly, although my star battle power system's highest battle power is 10-star battle power, no 10-star battle power has ever appeared in Elysium. Therefore, the latter part is only my own speculation. At that time, I didn't think too much about it. Because I was too bored, I popularized the star battle power system. It seems to have been popularized in Yuan Emperor's era. Hearing these words, Yi Chen smiled bitterly. It turned out that the so-called star battle power system was only something the temple spirit came up with out of boredom. However, this star battle power system was indeed useful in Elysium. The temple spirit had existed since ancient times. It had created something based on the strength of countless people, so it was impossible for it not to be perfect. At the very least, it was perfect from 1 star to 7 or 8-star battle power. What is the real cultivation method? Yi Chen asked again. Life and death 9th layer. The temple spirit uttered a new term. In the outside world, because there are too many races and abilities, it's impossible to classify one's battle prowess. Therefore, one's strength is still judged by realm, at least on the surface. 9 layers of life and death realm is the universal cultivation method. Although high realm doesn't necessarily mean high battle prowess, one can at least know how high one's foundation is. If one reaches the 1st layer, the recovery speed of Zhen Yuan will increase by 10 times. You won't need to go into seclusion for a few months to recover Zhen Yuan, and you won't need to waste a lot of treasures either. In this way, you can use the treasures to increase your realm. Then, which layer of life and death realm am I? You haven't even reached the 1st layer. If I don't tell you the real cultivation method, you might be able to reach the 1st layer of life and death realm by chance. But, you will never be able to reach the next realm. Not even at the 1st layer. Elysium is so weak. Yi Chen didn't think that others had reached the 1st layer. The temple spirit was speechless. Didn't I tell you? Although you haven't reached the 1st layer, in my opinion, you are already equivalent to the 3rd layer in the outside world. After all, your willpower and martial skills are very high, and your sword Dao has even reached the level of no sword in hand and no sword in heart. As for the invasion of the alien races, you will be suppressed by the rules of Elysium, and your realm will drop by at least 2 layers. The stronger you are, the greater the suppression. Otherwise, any 6th layer life and death realm warrior would be enough to kill all the kings of Elysium. That's true. Yi Chen was equivalent to the 3rd layer of life and death realm in the outside world, and those 6-star kings should be equivalent to the 4th layer. A 5th layer might not be able to kill all the kings, but a 6th layer would be more or less enough. Oh right, since you have the real cultivation method of life and death realm, why don't you pass it down? Don't you want to see Elysium become powerful and defend against the alien races? Yi Chen said. The temple spirit explained, you think I don't want to? The reason why I don't pass it down is because not everyone in Elysium can cultivate to the first layer. Let me tell you, if you want to cultivate to the first layer in Elysium, unless you are a peerless genius, you will turn into ashes at any time. Only outside Elysium can you increase your realm limitlessly, because there are complete rules there. Your lifespan will also increase to 100,000 years. Since ancient times, people could freely enter Elysium without any restrictions. Later on, when the entrance of Elysium was sealed, I had to pass it down to one person after many years. They were all invincible existences in their era. For example, Yuan Emperor had cultivated to the peak of the second layer of life and death realm. Unfortunately, no matter how much he cultivated, it was hard to guarantee that he wouldn't turn into ashes. Moreover, the further he cultivated, the harder it was to improve. If he didn't leave Elysium, he would never be able to cultivate to the peak. Otherwise, Yuan Emperor's achievements would be far greater. Are you sure I can cultivate to the first layer? Of course. How could my vision be wrong? Originally, even if you couldn't defeat Sword King, I would have passed it down to you after some time. The temple spirit said. Moreover, your current accumulation of cultivation base is already sufficient to reach the first layer, or even the peak of the first layer. Alright, since you've defeated Sword King, this Sword King title belongs to you. The temple spirit waved its small hand, and another row of words appeared behind the last title, Sword King Yi Chen. Dang! Dang! A melodious bell sound spread out from inside the conferring king palace. Ordinary people couldn't hear it, but all the life and death kings heard it. Many kings rushed over, wanting to see who had obtained the new title. In the past year, only a few had entered life and death realm, and Yi Chen was one of them. On the plaza of the conferring king palace, a conferring king pillar's phantom had appeared out of nowhere, with the words Sword King Yi Chen engraved on it. Sword King Yi Chen. The first life and death king opened his eyes wide in disbelief. He actually obtained the title of Sword King. More and more people rushed over, and there was no lack of peak kings among them. Although Sword King was not a monarch title, for modern people, the weight of Sword King's title was much higher than that of monarchs. This was because it was a supreme title, the apex of sword artists. Without becoming Sword King, one would never be able to become Sword Emperor. They could only be like Blue Cloud Sword Emperor and Snowflake Sword Emperor, with some other titles in front. Apart from this, in the future, if others wanted to obtain the title of Sword King, they would no longer have to challenge the ancient Sword King, but Yi Chen. What kind of glory was this? He did it. On the plaza, a faint smile appeared on Xuanho's face. Sword King Yi Chen's name shone brightly, representing the beginning of a new era. The kings present all had their emotions fluctuate, unable to calm down for a long time. Chapter 984. Inside the titled King Palace, the palace spirit said, before you leave the true spirit world, you must remember not to raise your cultivation beyond the second layer of life and death realm. For others, it might be a small price to pay, but for you, the price might be your life. Yi Chen knows this. Yi Chen faintly nodded. He was already very satisfied with cultivating to the first layer of life and death realm. If the palace spirit didn't tell him the true cultivation method, he would be like others, raising his cultivation base like a fool, and then starting from the aspect of martial skills. It should be known that the kings of Elysium were not fools. What they lacked was not martial skills, but the true cultivation method. In fact, in terms of martial skills, they might not be weaker than third or fourth layer outsiders. For example, according to the palace spirit, Yi Chen's current battle strength was already equivalent to the third layer outside, and this was under the condition that his cultivation base hadn't reached the first layer. This meant that Yi Chen's martial realm had far surpassed the third layer outside. The true cultivation method of life and death realm is to condense a Dao gate in your Dantian. What is a Dao gate? It is the Dao you walk. If you cultivate Sword Dao, the gate you condense is the Sword Dao gate. If you cultivate Blade Dao, the gate you condense is the Blade Dao gate. Regardless of whether it's the sword Dao gate or the blade Dao gate, there isn't much difference on the surface. It's only determined by the nature of your cultivation method. For example, if you cultivate an ordinary martial Dao with the earth attribute, the gate you condense will be earth and yellow. The shape of the Dao gate is the same, and the effect of raising one's realm is also the same. Red, orange, yellow, green, cyan, blue, purple, black, and white. At the first layer of life and death realm, the Dao gate will blossom with a red halo. At the second layer, an orange halo will appear outside the red halo. At the 9th layer, the Dao gate will blossom with 9 layers of white halo. Now, I will teach you the method to condense the Dao gate. As long as you condense the Dao gate, raising your realm in the future will be the same as before. Let nature take its course, and there will be no detours. As the hall spirit spoke, its figure flashed. Before Yi Chen could react, it floated in front of Yi Chen and pointed a finger at the spot between Yi Chen's eyebrows. In the next moment, the method to condense the Dao gate automatically entered Yi Chen's mind. This is the method to condense the Dao gate. Yi Chen felt as if he had arrived in another world. Alright, you can form the Dao gate in the King Conferment Hall. This should not take more than a month. If there are any mistakes, I can still correct them. Condensing the Dao gate was very crucial, so the hall spirit was a little worried. Alright. Yi Chen sat down cross-legged and closed his eyes. He wasn't in a rush to condense the Dao gate. Instead, he memorized the method to condense the Dao gate, word by word. Seeing this, the hall spirit nodded. Being cautious at all times was very rare. Condensing the Dao gate was very mysterious. This was because the Dantian wasn't any other place. It was the sea of true yuan. If anything was casually created in the Dantian, it would be destroyed by true yuan and turn back into true yuan. The Dao gate was eternal. If it was destroyed by true yuan, it wouldn't be called the Dao gate anymore. Therefore, the structure of the Dao gate was very complicated. It was like diamond and carbon, one was heaven and the other was earth. In the end, they were just two forms of the same element. The Dao gate was like a diamond, and true yuan was carbon. Although the former was condensed from true yuan, its form had changed. Almost there. 2 hours passed. Yi Chen already had a deep understanding of the method to condense the Dao gate. All he lacked was practice. Gurgle. In the Dantian, true yuan boiled and something appeared in the middle. It was a shard. The shard gave off a bright light. It looked like a true yuan crystal, but it was purer and tougher. The shard became bigger and bigger. When it became dozens of times bigger, it collapsed and was destroyed by true yuan. It turned back into a part of true yuan and no longer existed. It seems like I should condense the Dao gate image first. Yi Chen thought. This time, a blurry door appeared in the Dantian. This was the Dao gate image. The moment the Dao gate image appeared, although it was on the verge of collapsing from the true yuan, it didn't collapse. With the Dao gate image as the foundation, Yi Chen slowly condensed a bright shard. It was the same method as before, but there was one more step. However, he still failed in the end. The speed of condensing the Dao gate is too slow. The Dao gate image can't last that long. Do I have to do it step by step? I don't rush to condense the Dao gate, but slowly transform it from carbon to diamond. Yi Chen continued to condense the Dao gate and immersed himself in it. In the blink of an eye, 3 days passed. Yi Chen was still sitting there cross-legged. In his Dantian, the Dao gate image became more and more solid. Every once in a while, there would be a change. Although the change was not big, it had not been destroyed by true yuan yet. Fortunately, I'm on the right track. On the king's conferring pillar, the hall spirit saw everything. Even the Dao gate image in the depths of Yi Chen's Dantian did not escape his eyes. The higher the rank of the cultivation method, the harder it is to condense the Dao gate. But, correspondingly, the condensed Dao gate is extremely firm. It won't break easily and cause a drop in cultivation. Life and Death Realm was an extremely peculiar realm. It had high requirements for cultivation methods. Although condensing the Dao gate was extremely difficult, the foundation was firm. If the cultivation method's rank was low, the condensed Tao gate would not be firm enough. Breaking through to the second or third layer might not be a problem, but once one tried to break through to the higher realms, it would be extremely easy to fail, causing the Tao gate to break and causing a drop in cultivation. In the ancient era, it was not like no one's cultivation had dropped. Some people with poor foundation even dropped from the third layer to the first layer. The Tao gate would then be completely damaged and would need to be condensed again. Yi Chen's cultivation method was mid-heaven grade, so his foundation could be considered very firm. Even if he didn't make any progress in the future, he would still be able to reach the fourth layer. Without the Tao gate being damaged, he would even have a high chance of breaking through to the fifth layer. Another week passed, and it had already been 10 days since Yi Chen condensed the Tao gate. On this day, the Tao gate in Yi Chen's dantian was completely formed. It looked like a cyan diamond gate, hard, beautiful, and filled with a sharp aura. The moment the Tao gate was formed, a scarlet halo suddenly blossomed like a protective cover, protecting the Tao gate. At the same time, this cyan diamond gate seemed to have become a channel in the dantian. A large amount of Zhenyuan passed through the Tao gate, and when it came out, the quality of the Zhenyuan had increased by a large margin. First layer of life and death realm, completed. Chapter 985. Reaching the first layer of life and death realm makes a huge difference. It had been a long time since Yi Chen had felt a huge increase in his basic strength. Previously, although his cultivation base had advanced by leaps and bounds, reaching the level of 1,000 years, it was only an increase in quantity. Unless it was several hundred years or 1,000 years, he wouldn't feel anything, and the increase in strength wouldn't be obvious. But now, Yi Chen could clearly feel that his strength had increased by a large margin. Compared to painstakingly studying martial arts for a few months, it was undoubtedly much easier. Of course, Yi Chen also knew that this was the result of accumulating strength. If he had just entered life and death realm, even if Yi Chen didn't have to worry about being annihilated, he wouldn't have had the foundation to cultivate to the first layer. After all the Zhenyuan had been converted into a purer Zhenyuan, the interior of the Tao gate suddenly produced a powerful suction force. As soon as this suction force appeared, the outside world underwent a huge change. With Yi Chen as the center, boundless yuan qi of heaven and earth converged toward Yi Chen. At first glance, it looked like a nebula, and Yi Chen was the core of the nebula, unceasingly devouring it. TSK, you've reached the first layer of life and death realm so quickly. Worthy of being the Sword Tao genius who defeated the Sword King. The palace spirit waved its hand, and as if the restriction of the palace had been released, even more yuan qi of heaven and earth poured in, joining the nebula and rapidly strengthening it. After an unknown amount of time, when the nebula was completely devoured, Yi Chen's aura gradually stabilized. At the same time, a boundless might burst out from Yi Chen's body. Peak of the first layer of life and death realm, Yi Chen opened his eyes, his gaze like lightning. After reaching the peak of the first sky of life and death realm, Yi Chen shockingly discovered that his Zhenyuan cultivation base had already reached the 2,000-year level. In other words, this breakthrough had directly increased his cultivation base by 900 years. Why would he need to spend supreme-grade spirit stones or Zhenyuan crystals to increase his cultivation base? He could directly increase his realm. Just as I had guessed, because of your martial art's rank and mental state, you were able to reach the peak of the first sky of life and death realm right away. If your cultivation base was a bit higher, you might even be able to break through to the second sky of life and death realm. However, it is also a good thing to increase your cultivation base slowly. It will help you build a solid foundation for your martial art. Tao sects also needed the nourishment of true essence. Continuous breakthroughs would put too much pressure on Tao sects. Many people would rather raise their cultivation realm slowly than risk breaking through. Thanks a lot. Although the temple spirit looked like a child, Yi Chen did not dare to neglect it. He cupped his fists at it to show his gratitude. No need to thank me. Remember, don't leak the condensing method of this martial art. If something happens, you'll regret it. Back in the day, the condensing method was accidentally leaked, and countless life and death kings fell. It took many years for Elysium to recover. The temple spirit reminded Yi Chen. Yi Chen will not joke around with Elysium's future. You can rest assured. Yi Chen nodded. All right, let's go. The temple spirit waved its hand. Walking out of the titled King Palace, the door behind them closed. Perhaps it was Yi Chen's misperception, but the moment he walked out of the titled King Palace, Yi Chen felt the Tao gate in his body suddenly become unstable. A string of sparks appeared on its surface, and a dark flame appeared. Could it be related to condensing the Tao gate? Yi Chen looked pensive. The news of Yi Chen obtaining the title of Sword King had already spread in the circle of life and death kings. However, only a few people under life and death realm knew about it. Returning to the Yi family, there was one thing that needed to be done. And that was to establish a sect. As early as half a month ago, the Eternal Sky sect had already arrived at True Spirit Continent, and were currently residing on one of the peaks of the Yi family. Chen are you really going to establish a sword sect now? Yi Tianhao was somewhat worried. Yi Chen smiled and said, Father, I'm not establishing a sword sect now. I'm going to establish the Fallen Dust Sword sect. Fallen Dust Sword sect? Didn't you want to establish a sword sect before? Yi Tianhao let out a sigh of relief, but at the same time, he asked curiously. That was my idea before. But after coming out of the titled King Palace, my attitude has changed. Establishing a sword sect could indeed make the sword sect and Yi Chen famous in the world. But there would be endless troubles. When he was here, perhaps no one would dare to mess with the sword sect. But, after he left, the sword sect would undoubtedly become a thorn in the eyes of many other sword sects. No one would be happy to see such a huge mountain on top of their heads. They would definitely think of ways to make the sword sect decline, or even destroy it. If a sword sect wanted to be powerful for a long time, other than having powerful strength, it would also need to hide its strength and bide its time. It could not be too stubborn, or else it would be easy to break. This was an unchanging truth. Besides, this was also related to the change in Yi Chen's vision. He never thought that he would not be able to walk out of Elysium. When he walked out of Elysium, he would no longer have to face the powerful warriors of Elysium, but the powerful warriors of countless worlds. Establishing a sword sect would not be worth mentioning at all. There was no need to make everyone unhappy. Have you heard? Yi Chen is going to establish a sword sect. What's the name? I heard it's called Fallen Dust Sword Sect. Fallen Dust Sword Sect. Fortunately, I thought he was going to establish a sword sect. In the Sky Sword continent, the news of Yi Chen establishing the Fallen Dust Sword Sect had spread like wildfire. Almost all the life and death kings knew about it, and they all seemed to be very concerned. Fallen Dust Sword Sect. Yi Chen, I owe you a favor. Hearing the news, the Blue Cloud Sword Emperor revealed a faint smile. If he were in Yi Chen's shoes, he would certainly have the intention of establishing a sword sect, and would most likely put it into action. With strength and status, establishing a sword sect would be perfectly justifiable, and there would be no need to be afraid of anyone. However, he had never expected that Yi Chen would not establish a sword sect, but the Fallen Dust Sword Sect. In this way, there would not be any suppression. Fallen Dust Sword Sect. Good name. On the same day, the Snowflake Sword Emperor also received the news. On the Spirit Cloud Peak, the sounds of weapons clashing could be heard continuously. One moment, it was like a storm, and the next moment, it was like a stream. Only when he got closer did he realize that it was a fight between two youths. Of these two youths, one was dressed in black with a cold expression, while the other was dressed in white. His appearance was ordinary, but his eyes were gentle. Although the two of them were dressed differently and their appearances were vastly different, both of them had a sword embroidered on their sleeves. It could be seen that the cold-looking youth's swordsmanship was extremely sharp. Each of his moves was filled with killing intent. The most shocking thing was that his swordsmanship contained a faint trace of sword intent. It was precisely because of the existence of this trace of sword intent that his swordsmanship was exceptionally sharp. Even from afar, one could feel the coldness on one's skin. Compared to the grave and stern youngster, the sword arts of the white-robed youngster were not as sharp as the grave and stern youngster's. Neither had he comprehended sword intent. Their cultivation bases were more or less the same. However, no matter how the grave and stern youngster attacked, he could not break through the latter's sword aura. His sword aura was like a spring breeze, but also like a fine drizzle. Upon closer inspection, it did not seem like a spring breeze, nor was it a fine drizzle, but rather a gentle sunlight and the fragrance of plants. The sword arts of the grave and stern youngster filled with killing intent seemed to be entangled by countless fine threads. They became slower and slower, losing their destructive power and dissolving into nothingness. On the side, 2 young men and 2 young girls were watching the battle. Although Lung Xinghan had only become a disciple of Big Brother half a year ago, I have to admit that his sword arts talent is a bit better than mine. He has comprehended sword intent so early, and has pushed the lone peak of 13 swords to this level. Yang Jianhui, I am afraid that even you would not be able to compete with Lung Xinghan. Yi Xian looked at Yang Jianhui. Yang Jianhui was watching the battle seriously. Hearing this, he opened his mouth and said, "It does not matter if I am able to compete with fourth brother or not. What is important is that you were not able to compete with me 3 months ago. But, you can only beat me by 1 or 2 moves at most. Don't make it sound like you are suppressing me." Although Yi Xian said that, he was very depressed in his heart. There was always someone better than him. His sword arts talent was indeed very good, and his big brother was quite satisfied with him. But compared to Yang Jianhui, even if he did not want to admit it, he knew that he was not as good as Yang Jianhui. In the beginning, he could beat Yang Jianhui with only a few moves, but as time went on, Yang Jianhui grew at an amazing speed and caught up with him. Yang Jianhui was not that bad, after all, there was only one of him. But what made him lose confidence was the 3 new disciples of his big brother, one more powerful than the other. The second disciple was the young man in white, named Dongfang Bai. In other aspects, he was about the same as Yang Jianhui, but in terms of sword arts comprehension, he was even better than Yang Jianhui. His big brother had said that his achievements in sword arts were about the same as Dongfang Bai. As for the third disciple, it was Huang Sumei, who often hung out with his sister, Yi Xiaoxiao. She was 1 year younger than him and was his big brother's only female disciple. She was also very talented and smart. She could infer many things from one instance and was the smartest of his big brother's disciples. And just half a year ago, his big brother took in another 4th disciple, named Lung Xinghan. He was the young man in black who was evenly matched with Dongfang Bai. This Lung Xinghan's talent was extremely outstanding, and he was at the peak in all aspects. Not only did he comprehend sword intent, his comprehension of sword arts was not inferior to Dongfang Bai's. In terms of monstrous talent, he was almost the number 1 disciple of his big brother. Junior brother Lung is still a little lacking. I think he will lose to second senior brother in 10 moves. Huang Sumei's face was like a peach blossom. She was already quite charming at such a young age. Ding ding dang dang. After 9 moves, just as Huang Sumei said, Lung Xinghan lost. Not bad. Right at this moment, a voice suddenly rang out. "Big brother. Master." Yi Xian and Yi Xiaoxiao quickly turned their heads and called him big brother. The others also called him master, including the cold-looking Lung Xinghan. Touching Yi Xian's head, Yi Chen gave him an encouraging look and then looked at Dongfang Bai and Lung Xinghan. "The 2 of you have made obvious progress. Xiao Bai, you have a strong understanding of sword arts, but sword arts are used to kill people. Blindly dispelling them is not the right way. Xinghan, you have comprehended the sword intent, but don't think that you can defeat Xiao Bai with sword intent. A swordsman's greatest strength is not how powerful his sword art is or how strong his sword intent is, but how he uses it. You haven't reached the limit in using the sword intent, and you haven't completely transformed it into battle strength. Master is right." Dongfang Bai quickly lowered his head. Lung Xinghan also listened attentively. Turning his head to look at Yang Jianhui and Huang Sumei, a faint smile appeared on his face. It had already been a year since he had founded the Falling Dust Sword sect. During this time, he had taken in 3 new disciples, all of whom were from the Skysword continent. First disciple, Yang Jianhui. Second disciple, Dongfang Bai. Third disciple, Huang Sumei. Fourth disciple, Lung Xinghan. Among them, the first disciple, Yang Jianhui, had the most spiritual qi, the second disciple, Dongfang Bai, had a strong understanding of sword arts, the third disciple, Huang Sumei, was exceptionally intelligent and had an exquisite heart. Fourth disciple, Leng Xinghan, was the most monstrous one. He was the best in every aspect. Chapter 986. Master, I'm going to spar with junior brother Leng. Can you give me some pointers? Yi Chen's arrival made Huang Sumei's eyes brighten. Hearing this, Leng Xinghan curled his lips. If you want to spar, spar with senior brother or second brother. Don't drag me into it. Yi Chen faintly smiled. You're too smart for your own good. It's better to spend more time on comprehending sword arts. In the past half a year, your improvement isn't too obvious. Although you won't be at the bottom with your intelligence, it's only temporary. As time goes on, you'll slowly fall behind them. How could Yi Chen not see that his disciple worshipped him very much? Master, I'll try my best. Huang Sumei blinked her eyes and carefully looked at Yi Chen. She, Huang Sumei, was a person who thought highly of herself. In Gale region of Skysword continent, she was a peak sword genius. It should be known that more than 90% of the people in Skysword continent trained in sword arts. Being able to stand out among them was already extremely difficult, not to mention reaching the peak. Many people believed that her figure would inevitably appear in the 10 swords of Skysword continent in the future. As for the current 10 swords of Skysword continent, Huang Sumei admired them, but not worshipped them. She was confident that she could also reach this level. However, after hearing about Yi Chen's achievements, she felt a subtle sense of worship for the first time. This couldn't be blamed on her. Yi Chen's growth path was too shocking, surpassing the ancients and dazzling the contemporaries. Within the same generation, he was unrivaled. Especially after Yi Chen obtained the title of Sword King, Huang Sumei knew that be it in the past or present, no sword artist could surpass Yi Chen. If the ancient Sword King was a legend among sword artists in the past, then Yi Chen was a new legend among sword artists. When a new legend appeared, others could only look up to him. This was a legendary sword artist who had never been defeated. And she was fortunate enough to become his disciple and listen to his teachings. Moving his gaze away from Huang Sumei, Yi Chen said, "The four of you all have a great chance of reaching life and death realm. However, life and death realm is not the end, but a new starting point. Before that, you need to build a good foundation. Only with a strong foundation will you have more potential to break through." As someone who had been through it, Yi Chen was naturally clear about the effect of the foundation. Although it would not be able to turn into battle power in a short period of time, it would still affect you in the long run. It was the reason for having a deep foundation. Xinghan, you have already comprehended the sword intent. You can go to the Valley of Sword Intent to comprehend the sword intent at any time, but you must not be greedy and advance rashly. With that, Yi Chen said to Leng Xinghan, "Yes, master." Even the cold-blooded Leng Xinghan could not help but reveal a surprised expression after hearing Yi Chen's words. The Valley of Sword Intent was created by his master with one sword strike. It contained an extremely powerful immortal sword intent, which was extremely beneficial for comprehending the sword intent. His master had also said that the reason why he could have his current achievements was because he had comprehended the sword intent in the natural moat gorge. The sword intent in the gorge was also the immortal sword intent. Leng Xinghan was pleasantly surprised while the others were envious. The basic requirement to comprehend the sword intent in the Valley of Sword Intent was to have already comprehended the sword intent. Without the sword intent, one would not be qualified to go. Seeing everyone's expression, Yi Chen smiled and said, "The Valley of Sword Intent will not run away from there. Once you have comprehended the sword intent, you can all go." In the past year, Yi Chen had already raised the immortal sword intent to the 6th rank. Just like the destruction sword intent, the two sword intents were at the same level. He had once again achieved the sword intent resonance and the sword soul resonance. His improvement speed was gradually increasing, and he believed that in the near future, both of them would definitely break through to the 7th rank. The Valley of Sword Intent created by the 6th rank Immortal Sword Intent would not dissipate and could exist for at least 500 years, just like the natural moat gorge created by the Battle Emperor. Suddenly, Yi Chen frowned. Big brother, what's wrong? Yi Xian asked. Yi Chen waved his hand. You guys continue to practice. With that, he took a step into the void. Senior Yuan Emperor, are you saying that the seal of the true water palace has loosened? In the void, Yi Chen opened the high view painting and summoned Yuan Emperor's clone. Yuan Emperor said, True Water Emperor was a titled monarch before me. Just like you and me, he had condensed a Dao gate and cultivated to the second layer of life and death realm. However, the True Water Palace was destroyed 15,000 years ago, and True Water Emperor disappeared 25,000 years ago. He suddenly reappeared in the year of destruction. I suspect that the destruction of the True Water Palace is related to him. Unfortunately, I didn't get to see him. Yuan Emperor was the last titled monarch who had left his mark on the Emperor Scar Steely. Before him, no titled monarch had appeared in the past 10,000 years. Clearly, there was a gap of 10,000 years between him and True Water Emperor. However, after hearing Yuan Emperor's words, Yi Chen realized that in Yuan Emperor's era, True Water Emperor was still alive and had returned. Could it be that he had crossed the path of death and lived for 100,000 years? But, how could the destruction of the True Water Palace be explained? One question after another filled Yi Chen's mind. When the True Water Palace was destroyed, I and the other monarchs went to investigate, but we didn't find anything. Just in case, I joined hands with the other monarchs and sealed the ruins of the True Water Palace, leaving behind a spirit accumulation scroll with my clone sealed inside. Later on, you obtained the scroll. According to what you said later, mysterious Yin King came back to life and turned into another life form. I guess that there should be a huge seal inside the ruins, an extremely frightening seal. It was precisely this seal that caused the destruction of the True Water Palace and the truth to be concealed. Yuan Emperor said word by word. Feeling that the matter was thorny, Yi Chen said, I promised Senior that I would solve the crisis inside the ruins. Since the seal is starting to loosen, it's time to fulfill my promise. Yuan Emperor said, you must be extremely careful on this trip to the True Water Palace. Moreover, I don't feel comfortable letting you go alone. That Yang Qingxian is not as strong as you, but her methods are very mysterious. She might be able to turn the situation around at the crucial moment. You can bring her with you. Senior Xian Hu? To be honest, Yi Chen did not want to bring danger to others. He had a feeling that the danger inside the True Water Palace was definitely very frightening. How could Yuan Emperor not know what Yi Chen was thinking? He said, the seal hasn't been broken yet, so it's the easiest time to solve it. If the seal is broken, it will be a great calamity for the alien races. If you go alone, it's very likely that you won't be able to solve this crisis. Without experiencing the alien race's calamity, you don't know how difficult it is to kill some of the alien race's experts. You might be able to defeat them, but to kill them is as difficult as reaching the heavens. Otherwise, there wouldn't be so many seals existing since the ancient times. If you could kill them, why bother sealing them? There will be endless troubles in the future. Once you lose the chance and let them escape, the consequences will be unimaginable. Senior, are you saying that the True Water Palace is actually sealing the alien race's experts? Most likely. Can I invite other kings of Elysium? After asking, Yi Chen suddenly felt that something was wrong. Yuan Emperor shook his head, it's better not to alert them. Otherwise, there will be too many variables, and the war might break out earlier. What you lack now is time. Senior, you are right. Making up his mind, Yi Chen went to Shen Sect in Sky Marshal region on the same day. The True Water Palace. Xian Hu frowned, I've heard of the strange rumors about the True Water Emperor, but I didn't expect it to be true. But it's not safe with just you and me. It's better to invite the Demon Flower Emperor. Her demon flower can absorb any kind of energy and suppress the enemy's power. This way, we will have more confidence in solving this crisis. In the rich light ocean span, on the desolate sea. The demonic flower emperor's expression was grave as he said, back then, the Flash Demon King told me about this place, and I went in as well. The mysterious Yin King, who came back to life, was already killed by me. The Flash Demon King was the human demon king who had chased after Yi Chen. Like Yi Chen, he had also entered the True Water Palace. Later, he was injured by the resurrected mysterious evil king, and only recovered after a long time. Therefore, the Demon Flower Emperor entering the True Water Palace didn't make Yi Chen feel strange. But the Demonic Flower Emperor's tone changed. The mysterious Yin King's strength was at most at the level of a mid-stage king. With my strength, killing him should have been easy. However, the evil and powerful Yin Qi on his body made him extremely hard to kill. As long as the Yin Qi was not extinguished, he would be able to return to his peak. I used the demonic flower to completely absorb his Yin Qi before finally killing him. Xianhu said, "The Yin Qi is not extinguished. This is a trick of the evil spirit race. You have to be careful this time." The evil spirit race was a foreign race that had invaded Elysium. Although it was not as threatening as the demons to Elysium, it was not to be underestimated either. "Seniors, let's go down." Yi Chen opened the silver vertical eye on his forehead. As far as his eyes could see, the True Water Palace was still there. Compared to many years ago, the ominous qi inside the True Water Palace had become even denser. If an ordinary person were to come here, they would probably turn into a lunatic on the spot. Even Sea of Soul Realm experts might suddenly die upon being infected by this ominous qi, or even suffer a cultivation deviation during cultivation. Such a horrifying evil qi. It was Xuanho's first time coming here. Just like the Demon Flower Emperor had said, the inside of the tower was completely empty. The mysterious evil king was no longer there. Using his soul eye, Yi Chen soon found the second tower. On the top of this tower, there were 3 words, Black Smoke Tower. It is the Black Smoke King of the 13 kings of the True Water Palace. When they reached the top floor of the Black Smoke Tower, before the 3 of them even entered, a thick black smoke blew towards them. This black smoke was cold and evil, and it was filled with resentment and baleful aura. Under the impact of this black smoke, the ground and walls were covered in ice. The black smoke seemed to be solid, and it occasionally turned into the image of a struggling ghost face. Pang! The lid of the coffin opened, and a twisted black human figure jumped out. Chapter 987. Ha! Demon Flower Emperor roared and formed a seal with both of her hands. A black demonic flower quietly blossomed and swallowed the twisting shadow before suddenly closing up. Peng 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 peng. The closed demonic flower bulged unceasingly. The twisting shadow was most likely the resurrected Black Smoke King. After all, he was a life and death king when he was alive. After being enveloped by the demonic flower, it was impossible for him to not have the slightest bit of resistance. Especially the dense evil power, it actually increased his survivability, surpassing his previous life. Unfortunately, he was facing the Demon Flower Emperor. Demon Flower Emperor's demonic flower could absorb any form of energy, even the evil power. In terms of evil, demons were not inferior to evil spirit race. In terms of darkness, demons were even above evil spirit race. Being enveloped by the demonic flower, there was no way he could make a comeback. The frequency of the bulging of the demonic flower became lower and lower. On the other hand, the demonic ripples emitted by the demonic flower became more and more powerful. The result could be easily imagined. Ding! When there was no movement inside the demonic flower, a pair of claws filled with sinister evil qi shot out and landed on the ground. Unfortunately, this extreme-grade artifact has already turned into an evil weapon. Xianhu shook her head, feeling a bit regretful. This evil weapon can be used by my clansmen. I'll take it. The evil power on the claws had been mostly absorbed by the demonic flower. As for the remaining evil power, it should be fine as long as demonic power was used to cleanse it. Of course, the evil power on the claws had long since fused with the claw's origin. Demon Flower Emperor had absorbed the majority of the evil power, making the claws might inferior to the majority of extreme-grade artifacts. It was barely stronger than a pseudo-extreme-grade artifact, but it was already enough. Many life and death kings didn't even have a pseudo-extreme grade artifact. Leaving the Black Smoke Tower, the three entered the third tower. Inside the third tower was the resurrected Rainstorm King. Rainstorm King's strength was a lot stronger than the Black Smoke King's, and he probably had the strength of a peak mid-step king. However, as soon as he appeared, 99% of his yin chi power was destroyed by Yi Chen with a single sword attack. The second sword attack turned him into ashes. Yi Chen, who had the sixth-step destruction sword intent, was also the nemesis of these evil powers, and was even purer than the Demon Flower Emperor. The Demon Flower Emperor absorbed their power, while Yi Chen destroyed their power. Unknowingly, the three of them had eliminated the 9 monarchs and arrived at the 11th tower. That Blood Refinement King's strength is already not inferior to the yellow-robed old monster that you killed. Adding on his inextinguishable yin chi, he can contend against an existence that is twice as strong as the yellow-robed old monster. These 13 kings of the true Water Palace are each stronger than the last. I wonder how strong the next Golden Bone King will be. The Blood Refinement Monarch was a monarch of the 10th tower. His strength was comparable to the current monarchs. Even the Devil Flower Empress couldn't completely absorb the evil energy of the Demonic Flower Empress in one go. After all, in a situation where the difference in strength wasn't too great, the Demonic Flower Empress wouldn't allow the Devil Flower Empress to absorb his energy. It was just like how the Devil Flower Empress couldn't do anything to the Zhong Tianxiang Emperor, even though the Zhong Tianxiang Emperor was much stronger than the Blood Refinement Monarch. When they arrived at the top of the Golden Bone Tower, the three's expression changed slightly. At this time, the Golden Bone King was no longer a living being, but a dark golden skeleton with a cold white flame burning in its eye sockets. Waves of evil soul power attacked the three. In terms of evil power, it was more than twice as strong as the Blood Refinement King. 8 trigrams extermination. Yi Chen didn't hesitate. The Sky Scorpio sword floated above his head and divided into 8, then 64. The 64 sword images combined into an 8 trigrams sword array. As soon as the 8 trigrams sword array took shape, a frightening extermination aura covered the sky. Under the amplification of the destruction sword intent, it reached an unprecedented level. During the battle with the Sword King in the titled King Palace, Yi Chen had comprehended the state of no sword in the hand and no sword in the heart, greatly increasing the strength of his soul. This meant that the might of his sword control art had also greatly increased. Moreover, he had also cultivated to the peak of the first layer of life and death realm, greatly increasing the purity of his Jin Yuan. With the combination of the two, the current 8 trigrams extermination sword art was countless times more powerful than the original 8 trigrams extermination sword art. Puff! Before the Golden Bone King could make a move, the 8 trigrams sword array swept across his body. Like a candle being blown out, the Golden Bone King's body instantly turned into dense yin chi. This yin chi was torn apart by the 8 trigrams sword array, and was immediately extinguished by the sword chi as if it had never existed. How did your sword control ART's might increase so much? Demon Flower Emperor asked in a strange tone. Yi Chen thought for a moment and honestly said, "My soul's strength has increased a bit. Moreover, I've obtained the true cultivation method of life and death realm, raising my cultivation base to the peak of the first layer of life and death realm." True cultivation method, the peak of the first layer of life and death realm? Not only Demon Flower Emperor, but Xianhu also curiously looked over. Yi Chen knew that he had to explain to the two, purely accumulating cultivation base is not true cultivation. In life and death realm, there are also realms, divided into 9 layers of life and death realm. To step into the first layer of life and death realm, one must condense one's own Dao Gate in one's Dantian. With the Dao Gate as the foundation, one can raise one's realm level by level. However, the laws of Elysium are somewhat incomplete, not as complete as the outside world. Therefore, the true cultivation method has not been leaked. Otherwise, forcibly condensing a Dao Gate would cause the backlash of Elysium's laws, causing the Dao Gate to instantly collapse and turn into ashes. But how did you do it? Demon Flower Emperor wanted to ask how Yi Chen could cultivate to the first layer of life and death realm. Yi Chen bitterly smiled. "After I defeated the Sword King's consciousness body, The palace spirit told me the true cultivation method. However, he warned me not to impart it to others, lest many life and death kings fall and harm the true spirit continent's Yuan Qi. So that's how it is. Demon Flower Emperor and Xianhu looked pensive. I didn't expect life and death realm to have 9 layers. If one can cultivate to the 9th layer and refine Jin Yuan 9 times, as long as one's martial skills are not too bad, one can easily surpass 10-star battle strength. Xianhu sighed. Yi Chen nodded. Xianhu was right. Yuan Emperor was only at the peak of the 2nd layer, but he already had a peak 7-star battle strength. If he could raise his realm to the 9th layer, surpassing 10 stars would be a piece of cake. He wouldn't even need to reach the 9th layer. He could even surpass the 8th layer. Of course, this was mainly because Yuan Emperor's martial skills were too powerful, and his martial will was also powerful. Even if he was only at the peak of the 2nd layer, he would be able to contend against a 5th layer life and death realm expert. Although life and death realm experts were suppressed too much by Elysium, not only would their realms be suppressed, but their bodies would also be injured. For a 7th layer life and death realm expert, apart from being suppressed by 2 layers, it was enough to show the might of Yuan Emperor, no, of Elysium's invincible figure of each generation. The 9 layers of life and death realm. The higher one goes, the harder it becomes to cultivate. Apart from having a high rank and a high mental state, one's Dao Gate also needs to be nurtured for a long time. None of these are dispensable. If one is not careful, one's Dao Gate might be damaged, and one's realm might drop, forcing one to cultivate from the beginning. Although I don't know about the situation outside, I can imagine that there shouldn't be many people who can cultivate to the 9th layer. Breaking through in life and death realm was completely different from breaking through under life and death realm. If one failed to break through under life and death realm, one's realm wouldn't drop. On the other hand, breaking through in life and death realm carried a huge risk. Some people might break through from the 8th layer to the 9th layer, and might even drop 3 or 4 layers. Under such circumstances, the number of people who could reach the peak of life and death realm would be reduced by 99%. It was easy to explain why demons and other peak experts didn't come to Elysium. Having their realm suppressed didn't matter to them, but having their origin damaged was the same as taking their lives. Golden Bone King's weapon was a huge blade emitting an evil qi, which was collected by Yi Chen. He wanted to forge supreme-grade swords in the future, and the more supreme-grade materials the better. Although these were evil weapons, they were still of good quality. Breaking them down would give him a lot of supreme-grade materials, so it was better to be prepared. With the death of Golden Bone King, there was only 1 tower left. As for True Water Emperor, he should be at the center of the 12 towers, where the evil power was the strongest. Among the 12 kings under True Water Emperor, Sky Destruction King is the strongest. According to historical records, he's more powerful than the other 11 kings combined. I'll first reverse the environment of Sky Destruction Tower. Xuanho's expression turned grave as her body floated up. In the next moment, an ancient gate appeared above Xuanho's head. This gate rotated once, and an unfathomable power immediately spread out from it. What a marvelous and mysterious way. Demon Flower Emperor's eyes flashed with curiosity. Using his soul power, he sensed that the void around Sky Destruction Tower had been reversed. The powerful evil power seemed to have a hole, and the air inside the ball leaked out in all directions. This place became a different kind of vacuum world. The evil power was getting lesser and lesser, and the essence of heaven and earth was getting more and more. Raw. At this moment, a wave of earth-shattering baleful energy gushed out from the bottom of the Annihilation Pagoda. Boundless evil energy gushed out, and a distorted figure wrapped in white cloth scuttled out. He grabbed out with his hand, and a white cloth hand the size of a small mountain appeared in the void, grabbing towards the ancient door above Mysterious Queen's head. Extinction. The 8 trigrams sword formation above Yi Chen's head had already formed, and it attacked at the white hand. Boom. 2 different kinds of extinction power clashed with each other, clashing against each other. Break. Pulling out the iron blood silver-blue sword, Yi Chen's body flashed. When he appeared again, he was behind the figure wrapped in white cloth, and the figure's body was split into 2. You all deserve to die. All of you deserve to die. I'm not willing. I hate you. The white-clothed figure's inextinguishable yin-chi far surpassed Golden Bone King's. Yi Chen's frightening sword strike merely destroyed a portion of his power. His severed body fluttered like sand, and the white-clothed figure condensed in another direction. His power didn't seem to have been consumed much. His voice was brimming with resentment, making this place seem even more ominous, like hell itself. 6-star battle power. Yi Chen's expression turned serious for the first time. Chapter 988. Although the 8 trigrams extermination sword technique was not Yi Chen's strongest killer move, the increase in cultivation realm and the strength of the soul allowed this sword technique to have the attack power of a 5-star overlord. In addition, the destruction sword essence could restrain the evil energy. The only explanation for the King of Sky Destruction's ability to block this move was that his combat power had reached the 6-star level. Putting aside the fact that he had a 6-star combat power, the King of Sky Destruction's inextinguishable yin energy was also so strong that it made one's hair stand on end. Yi Chen's sword attack just now had only destroyed a trace of his power. Devouring blood flower. Before this, the Demon Flower Emperor had already started to weave seals rapidly. When the King of Sky Destruction's body had just condensed, a blood-red flower that was as big as a mountain swallowed the King of Sky Destruction in one gulp and tightly wrapped him up. Shortly after, it shrunk at a shocking speed and finally shrunk to the size of an ordinary house. Crack. Unfortunately, the King of Sky Destruction's strength was too strong. He tore the devouring blood flower in half with his hands. The white cloth fluttered as he pounced towards the Demon Flower Emperor at an extremely fast speed. Flower Shield. The Demon Flower Emperor had rich combat experience. When she saw the King of Sky Destruction pouncing towards her, she did not panic at all. Clusters of black flowers condensed and compressed in front of her, turning into a flower shield that shone with a black radiance. Boom! The King of Sky Destruction had a 6-star combat power after all. Although the flower shield had the absorption ability of the demon flower and could absorb energy damage, it only lasted for a moment before it was completely penetrated by the King of Sky Destruction. The twisted palm that was wrapped in the white cloth grabbed towards the Demon Flower Emperor's head, as if it wanted to take her head off. Courting death. How could Yi Chen watch the Demon Flower Emperor perish? He executed the orbital steps and instantly appeared beside the King of Sky Destruction. The iron-blooded silver-blue sword seemed to tremble slightly, and countless folded sword lights enveloped the King of Sky Destruction. Poof, poof, poof. The King of Sky Destruction's eyes were ferocious as he forcefully resisted Yi Chen's sword move. He was still prepared to forcefully kill the Demon Flower Emperor. However, this void essence slash of Yi Chen came from the Yuan Emperor. It was the most miraculous move. The folded sword lights not only sliced open the King of Sky Destruction's body, but also isolated the space. The King of Sky Destruction's palm passed through layers of overlapping space, but he was unable to reach the Demon Flower Emperor. He was like a drowning old man trying to grab onto anything on the water surface in vain. I'm going to eat you alive. The King of Sky Destruction turned his target to Yi Chen. With a bang, his body exploded into a ball of majestic yin-chi. The yin-chi was like a whirlwind, freezing the void and sweeping toward Yi Chen, who was close at hand. I am immortal. Switching between offense and defense, the iron-blooded silver-blue sword held horizontally in front of his chest. Yi Chen's eyes became calm and solemn. A powerful immortal sword will seeped out of his body and protected him. Whoosh! The yin-chi engulfed Yi Chen and brushed past him, appearing behind Yi Chen. On the other hand, Yi Chen was enveloped by a layer of white holy light that was invisible to the naked eye. Outside the holy light, grey smoke kept bursting like dust. The immortal sword will had advanced to the 6th rank. In a battle of the same level, Yi Chen was almost invincible. It was absolutely impossible for the King of Sky Destruction to hurt him. Damn it! The King of Sky Destruction's body was emitting green smoke. Previously, when Yi Chen had attacked him with a sword move that contained the destruction sword will, he had not been injured much. At most, his power had decreased a little, which could be ignored. However, when he had brushed past his opponent's body just now, he had been seriously injured. Although the Immortal Sword Will was not as powerful as the Destruction Sword Will, when he had tried to invade Yi Chen's body, he had been repelled by the Immortal Sword Will and destroyed. Mysterious Way, freeze. An ancient door suddenly flew toward the King of Sky Destruction. It was Xianhu who had made a move. The King of Sky Destruction's eyes flickered. A pair of grey wings formed by dense yin qi appeared on his back. With a flap of the grey wings, he shot out like a shooting star, shuttling through the void. His speed was so fast that it was almost impossible to lock him down with soul power. However, he had underestimated Xuanho's mysterious way. As the King of Sky Destruction dodged, the ancient door suddenly enlarged by 1,000 times. No, it should be said that the ancient door did not enlarge, but the space inside the door shrank by 1,000 times. The King of Sky Destruction's figure was like a speck of dust. No matter how fast he was always within the range of the ancient door. In a split second, the ancient door covered the King of Sky Destruction. The King of Sky Destruction roared again and again. His violent energy attacked the ancient door. Instantly, the ancient door was full of cracks, and it looked like it was about to collapse. Kill. This was a rare opportunity. Yi Chen held the iron blood silver blue sword with both hands and slashed out. The dark green sword screen ignored the space distance. With a flash of green light, the King of Sky Destruction's body was split in the middle. Before he could turn into yin qi and escape, a dark green light suddenly burst out, shining like a sun. Ah! The scream was earth-shattering. In the dark green light, a large amount of yin qi was annihilated. A distorted human face kept struggling, as if it wanted to tear apart the seemingly gentle but actually violent and destructive dark green light. Unfortunately, its power was too weak. The dark green light was the power of water and fire, and a trace of it could destroy a mountain. Together with the 6th rank destruction sword essence, not to mention that it was weakening now, even if it was at its peak, it would not be able to bear the consequences. Puff! The last trace of yin qi was annihilated, and the King of Sky Destruction's voice stopped. No wonder he is the first king under the Emperor of True Water. If he had not turned into an evil spirit, it would have taken me several times more effort to kill him. The evil spirit body had indeed greatly increased the King of Sky Destruction's immortality. However, he had encountered Yi Chen, who had the Destruction Sword Essence and the Immortal Sword Essence, and was completely restrained. Of course, if it were not for Xianhu and the Demon Flower Emperor, Yi Chen would have had to spend more effort to kill him. The Demon Flower Emperor's Demon Flower had absorbed a lot of his power. Xuanho's mysterious way had even reversed the environment, so that the opponent could not absorb any power. Finally, she had used the mysterious way to freeze the opponent. It could be said that the Demon Flower Emperor was not only the kind of king who became stronger the more he fought, but also one of the best teammates. With her around, as long as the opponent's strength was not too strong, she would constantly weaken them. As for Xuanho's mysterious way, it could be said to be unpredictable. It was no wonder that when the Dragon King and Xianhu joined hands, they could kill the 9 Underworld Demon King, who had no way to escape and almost died. With the King of Sky Destruction's death, only the Emperor of True Water was left. The three's mood became a little heavy. The King of Sky Destruction was already so strong. They did not know how strong the Emperor of True Water, who could leave a mark on the Emperor Scar Steely, was. They hoped that it was as Yuan Emperor had said. The Emperor of True Water, or that evil spirit expert, was currently at his weakest. Otherwise, it would be impossible for the three of them to defeat the other party. Buzz! In the center of the 12 towers, there was a dense fog. Suddenly, an extremely evil power burst out, like a huge stone thrown into a lake. Ripples spread out, and a chilly wind roared. But soon after, this evil power seemed to be cut off, turning into a rootless duckweed, and calmed down again. Yi Chen opened the silver vertical eye between his brows and tried his best to look at the center of the fog. This fog was formed by dense yin qi, and it was very turbid. Through the fog, Yi Chen could vaguely see a few blurry shadows. Yi Chen tried his best to see the faces of the shadows, but the laws there were too chaotic. The sealing power and evil power were mixed together, and even the soul I could not see through them. Closing the soul eye, Yi Chen slowly let out a breath and said, "Someone came here before us. Let's go in and see." Different from Yi Chen and Xianhu, the dense and terrifying evil power here did not make the Demon Flower Emperor uncomfortable. Of course, she did not like it either. Activating her protective Jin Yuan or demonic power, the three walked into the fog step by step. It was unknown how deep the fog was. It was like a surging sea. When the three of them entered, there was not even a splash of water. After about half a cup of tea's time, the fog disappeared and the three of them came to a huge flat stone ground. In the center of the flat stone ground, there was a blood-red pattern with a diameter of dozens of meters. The blood-red pattern was formed by countless ripples, and it also looked like the ancient character for water. How could the three of them not know that this was a seal? Beside the blood pattern stood 4 figures. Yi Chen and the other 2 all knew these 4. They were actually the Destruction Demon Emperor, the Golden Turtle Old Ancestor, the Black Fiend Emperor, and the Earth Demon Emperor. "It's you guys." The 4 had already noticed that someone had come in, but they did not expect that it would be Yi Chen, Xianhu, and the Demon Flower Emperor. In fact, they thought that everything was foolproof. After all, their actions were very secretive, and not a trace of energy leaked out. On the contrary, the seal around the True Water Palace ruins prevented the energy from leaking out, which served as a cover. "So, you have all been possessed." After a slight shock, Xuanho's expression returned to normal. "How did you know we were here?" The Destruction Demon Emperor asked calmly. Yi Chen smiled faintly, with a sharp glint in his eyes. "If you don't want people to know, then don't do it." Although he said so, Yi Chen also knew that if it were not for the Yuan Emperor's seal and the Yuan Emperor's doppelganger beside him, he would never know that something had happened here. "Since you are here, don't leave. The 3 of you, stay." The Destruction Demon Emperor did not panic at all, and the corner of his mouth raised into a sinister sneer. "Before the matter is resolved, we naturally will not leave." Yi Chen released the sword domain, which enveloped the entire area. "Ha!" The possessed Golden Turtle Old Ancestor roared, and a powerful domain burst out from his body. This domain was extremely evil, and it constantly attacked Yi Chen's sword domain. "If we were outside, I might be afraid of you, but unfortunately, you should not have come here. The endless evil power here can be absorbed by us at any time, and our strength will multiply." The voice of the Golden Turtle Old Ancestor was sharp and thin, extremely ear-piercing. His gaze, with a lustful look, swept over Xianhu and the Demon Flower Emperor, and he sneered. "I'll leave the 3 of them to you. Remember, don't let them escape." The Destruction Demon Emperor did not seem to have any intention of making a move. Waves of evil power condensed into runes, branded on the blood pattern, and eroded the power of the seal. At this moment, more than half of the blood pattern had been eroded, and grey mist escaped from time to time. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories,